Live right now because hey, I'm behind schedule, which was very convenient. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Discussing Tabletop. It is June 8th. Yes, we are late. It's all my fault, but also it's convenient because Momo is going to be late anyway.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I also can't stay for the whole show, but because I technically have other plans.
Why don't we hit up your stuff first then? And up and on the big
Twitch is not loading.
Oh, good.
Twitch, okay.
I mean, it's fine for me.
There it goes. That took for so long.
It sometimes be doing that, unfortunately.
I love Comcast. It's the best internet provider.
The very best. So anyway, yeah, everybody's having a fine day. Welcome. We have a bunch of topics to talk about. I'll throw the docket in the chat, but we're adding one here on first because I forgot to put it on the list.
That's fair.
I knew about it. Previous mention, I forgot.
Yeah, that happens a lot with you.
I have terrible memory.
That's fair, honestly.
So yes, Momo, you are Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it finally came after like a year of being announced and then a month of shipping. It is finally here. It has a very nice box.
Lot, though. I gotta say, that's a lot of
time. It's Square Enix, who famously has the worst shipping partners on the planet.
Yeah.
This is a side tangent, but to rant about Square Enix's horrible shipping partners, and why I do think if you like Final Fantasy, you should buy this, but not through the Square Enix store. For two reasons. One, it took a month to get here. The other reason, it had $20 shipping attached to it. And it had to ship from California. Get it from an actual game store.
That's not even like, it's like...
Yeah. The shipping company that Square Enix uses for North America is so garbage, and they overcharge for everything. And they also break things constantly. Like they put no care into the packages they handle. I've had friends who've ordered like really nice figurines that have arrived broken.
Oh, that sucks.
So I don't buy things from Square Enix very often. But box is very nice. Very Final Fantasy. One of the complaints I saw is people were complaining that this didn't come with character creation rules, which is a complaint I find interesting because no starter set does.
Yeah, most starter sets come with pre-made characters.
Yes.
Rather than
this comes with a lot of pre-made characters.
That's cool because most come with only enough for like a party.
I got some nice dice. So it uses D20s and D6s. Those are the only dice it uses, I believe. And the D20s are pretty nice. They have the little Final Fantasy XIV logo as the 20 on them, which I think is very cute. You can see it. It's the little circle fire thing.
Yeah, cool.
You got the booklets that they did put up for free online for players and GMs if you didn't want to buy this. You just wanted to look at the rules. The inside of the box has like DM cheat sheet on it, which is very helpful. So you have your DCs there. The DCs are a lot like Pathfinder DCs. As in, the like average DC is 20. By the looks of it, which is fine. I like systems like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta empty out the box.
Standard, easy, not complex.
Yeah, it's a D20 system, so it's not too bad. It has how to play each class on it, which is nice. And you know these because you've played every Final Fantasy game to except for 14, which honestly I think you shouldn't because it's a huge time investment.
Look,
it's also an MMO, which is like the worst thing you could possibly get addicted to.
I just have a dislike of MMOs in general to begin with.
That is fair. There's only two MMOs I've ever liked, and it's the Star Wars MMO and the Final Fantasy one.
Well, see, here's the thing. I did try a few out in the very early days of the MMO craze. My computer could sort of run them. It was not really good, though, the computer I had at the time. So it was probably a combination of the people, the computer, and the game itself.
It really
Because
depends.
we're talking like pre-WoW days.
Oh, that was like the Wild West of MMOs before WoW standardized everything.
Yeah. So
It was like when things were a little bit just terrible.
yes.
But the classes they provide here are Warrior, White Mage, Dragoon, and Black Mage. So tank, healer, 2 DPS.
Cool.
And then you have little cards for all your abilities. Each class has 3 cards, one for level 30, one for level 40, and one for level 60. So each tier of play that you can test out, which I actually think is really nice. Instead of having a starter set like D&D's just be like level 1 to 3, have it be more levels of play so people can test out how the system actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Because higher levels are very important in these kind of games. These in here. We got terrain maps, pretty standard.
Yeah.
And then we have what I think is the most fun part, the cardboard tokens. They went through the effort of putting the symbols from the game into token form. So you've got group up marker, stack marker, AoE, the line AoEs. And you got just a bunch of fun enemy tokens you can fight. Honestly, if it didn't have the $20 extra of shipping, I'd be more happy. However, this cost me $75 in total, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
so buy it at your local game store if you can find it.
Highly agree. The unfortunate thing that
as for the system itself, it's D20 system. It plays a lot like a very combat-oriented 5th edition, which I like because I actually like combat games a lot. I'm a big tactical nerd. Something interesting about the system, I was reading through the Game Master Guide last night. Equipment doesn't actually matter. You do not buy equipment. Equipment is provided via the scenario you're playing, like in the kind of, because you're part of an adventuring guild. The guild provides you what you need for the mission.
Interesting.
So you don't have to worry about buying mundane equipment, things like that. I assume, because the actual 2 core books are not out, I assume there would be no reason why you couldn't have that be a thing. The economy system of Final Fantasy exists. You have a currency, you have a relative price point in games for a lot of equipment. You could easily make your own.
Interesting.
But this is just I don't know how much you know about Japanese tabletop.
Unfortunately, very little. I've seen a few things, but haven't really dived deep into them.
What I've come to learn from research is a lot of Japanese tabletop, rather than big campaign focuses, are scenario focused, like one-off missions.
Okay.
And it's not that hard to adapt that to a larger campaign, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's pretty common.
yeah.
I mean, I saw a whole article about how you really should do a bunch of shorter campaigns than to do like one long one anyway with most RPGs.
Well, again, I think that's the
RPGs should not be the
traditional way
standard.
of a lot of.
Yeah, no, it is. It was how it all started. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
That is what is in the box. I am happy with my purchase. I'd be happier again if Square Enix had a better shipping partner that didn't suck. But this is the world we live in. It's Square Enix. They're a garbage company.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out why. I was actually looking into that. I mean, I found out what company they use. But the company itself doesn't seem like the problem as much as the way Square Enix handles it, where it just creates a whole bunch of extra headache, and they probably just recoup it through costs.
Square Enix is a very out-of-touch company, and they always have been. I mean, look at the fact that this is slightly off of tangent. Look at the fact they sold like 70% of all their IPs to get into crypto, and then that failed horribly. So now they really only have like 10 IPs left.
Mm-hmm.
They sold everything like idiots.
They really did, and it was kind of it's this kind of thing you shake your head and you're just like, why, guys? Why? Come on, man. You feel both bad for them
yeah,
and also like not because
I
it's their own
don't
studio.
feel bad for them. I genuinely don't like Square Enix. I'll play their games. I think they do make great games, but
Well, I mean, like,
the actual corporate side of Square Enix is genuinely one of the worst companies.
I feel bad for the creators and people that do make really good games there. Basically, the people below management. Because there's a lot of them, and they do a lot of good job. You know? Upper management, no,
yeah.
nothing about them.
The actual upper management echelon is genuinely terrible and very out of touch with society in general.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like the way they do shipping is just really weird.
Mhm.
Like they ship it to like a warehouse and then
It's
then they like
very
do
strange.
that, and so it's just so it's like the way Square Enix, like this company may or may not be like bad, but it sounds like honestly just that.
Yeah, I
like,
think it's
they
just Square Enix is a logistical nightmare to deal with.
Yeah. So
especially since like looking it up, like Square Enix will not sell outside of Japan, so basically they have to get other companies to like hold on to so I think part of it is like the other companies, if they want to ship it to you like from like a local spot, they have to import it themselves, and then they have to like hold on to it if they want like a warehouse store of it for easier shipping. It's like, so it's just so many extra costs.
Very dumb.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Woo.
Someone's got that. We can show it off.
When the full books come out, because I will buy the full books, I will probably run a game of it, and then I can tell you how it actually plays. I haven't played it yet. I've only read the rule books. I like the rules personally. I like that it's a combat-heavy game.
Yeah, I'd love to play some more combat-heavy games just because I do like tactics. I've always kind of liked some of that, but I feel like I've never actually played in a game that has
I
a
will
lot
say
of it. I feel like
a
even
lot
the
of
current path. I'll let you finish.
I will say, a lot of the like licensed RPGs, they don't really ever capture the feel of what they're trying to, recreate in tabletop format. Reading through the rules, and it's probably because this was designed by the actual developers of Final Fantasy XIV. They have basically one-to-one turned the video game into a tabletop game.
That's cool.
That's good. Yeah. See, that's a good thing when you have the people that worked on like the source and then can do it. That's a good kind of adaptation.
Yeah, most things don't do that. But yeah, as I was saying though, it's like I want to do like a tactical game at some point. Like it's so interesting. Like I like the idea of Traveler in part because it's actually very tactical if you use all the optional rules. They have like a whole separate book with like filled with optional rules that make it like super tactical, and I'm like, oh, so this is what it was missing. But also it's like then players have to remember a whole bunch of extra stuff, so you need players who are willing to do it too. So it's just this whole thing. But yeah, like even Pathfinder, like it's supposed to be tactical, but honestly, playing it, it's like within like the game right now, either it's just like it just doesn't feel like it matters very much as long as you've got people who can hit hard, you're good.
Unfortunately, that's all it comes down to is do big damage number, the rest doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's Pathfinder, and I thought it'd be more tactical, but no.
Honestly,
it just has more. It's because none of us. Because in the next game, I already said this like in the chat. Next time I'm doing a combat maneuver build, that will be a much more tactical character, because I need to position and stuff.
Again, I think it's also all the character builds that we have. We have damage dealer, damage dealer, damage dealer, damage dealer, damage dealer. That's all the builds.
We're a party of damage.
I'm a tank.
But your job is take damage, deal damage.
Yeah.
You know. And that's the thing is, Joe's job is the same thing. And then the 3 ranged people are all just deal damage people. So it's
and it sounds like because Pathfinder sucks when it comes to like debuffing, because it's all like there are either ones that
it's
are
a
like
lot of save
blindness, where it's like it's save or suck. So it's like and then if you succeed, it's like broken. So it's all like, oh well, they're out of combat.
It is better to buff your party than to debuff your enemy. However, I will say there are a handful of debuff spells that do just end the encounter instantly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I've kind of started to find like blindness, deafness.
In the pirate game, we had a fight with a werewolf man who was angry, and it was going to be a difficult fight because we had to keep him alive because he's like a pirate lord. All I did was I cast the spell Greater Forbid Action, which forbids a character from taking any action.
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yeah,
just can't do anything for like rounds per level.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about like 5e, where it's like, I like 5e, where it's like, it can be kind of tactical, because there's a lot less save or suck. There's still a decent amount of it, but they get around it a little bit better. The problem is 5e just isn't hard enough.
I will
for
say,
tactics to
some of
be-
my players have been very tactical in 5e with certain non-class abilities, like the telekinetic feats. I have had players specifically try to, like, move enemies to edges of cliffs to telekinetically shove them off of the cliffs.
Yeah, no, I'm saying 5e can be... 5e actually has a lot of options for
Mhm.
tactics. The problem is the game in and of itself is not hard enough. Like, the enemies are not difficult enough.
Okay.
And dying is, like, to where it's needed.
I'll add some things. Pathfinder First Edition can be very tactical, but it requires someone to make a tactical build, unfortunately.
It requires a tactical party, which is
I will
too.
be tactical build next
I
time.
will actually say,
Yeah.
it does not require a tactical party. I have played the only tactical character in a group, and the thing is, my ability to do those tactics forces other people to work off of it, because it gives them advantages. So it makes those non-tactical builds more tactical.
Because I will be in the next campaign we do. I have already locked it in. I've already made the rough build. I'm going to do a combat maneuver ranger. Because I don't want to play a fighter, and for combat maneuvers you need a full BAP character.
Yes, you really much do. Very much do. The other thing I was going to say is, second edition improves a little bit of this. It's a lot less save or suck. It's like degrees of stuff, a lot more in that. And really, again, this is something I say. If you really want some tactical stuff, we have to pull out 4th edition.
Yeah, 4th edition is a tactics
4th edition has 90% tactics.
It was such a tactical game when I played it, because sort of like just a lot of the maneuverability and stuff in that game. That's the tactical.
No, maneuverability is actually important in 4E. It's can be important in like 5e, like there are ways to make it useful, but in general it's not super useful in 5e, because it's all like in actuality, I'm actually really liking Celasta, because I've been playing that game, and because they actually utilize half cover, like they actually make it so there's cover and stuff and a lot more ranged units, which is so interesting.
That is
like,
something I wish Baldur's Gate 3 had.
Same.
Was actually a cover system.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably move on to our other news topics, at the very least.
Alright, goodbye. That's all I came here to talk about. I have other stuff. See ya.
Bye.
Enjoy show.
Yep, thanks for joining. Alright. So, I got a couple of other things here, and I'm going to give the Kickstarter drop page and then the first page, because we got, which I think is fine, but I did want to just mention it, because it's based on, popular IP. They're doing a expansion for the Zoo Tycoon board game. Probably I can get much better than that. I keep forgetting to fix these links from...
yeah.
That works? Does. There we go. Proof it. Just delete part of that there. There you go. It's the same link, but with less junk at the back. So yeah, that's another expansion to it. Honestly speaking, I think this is fine. But I thought to shout it out because, I don't remember if we talked about the Zoo Tycoon board game when it first came out, the original one. I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't remember it, but then again, that just means it could have also been over 2 years ago.
Could have been over 2 years ago, and honestly, could have also been like just critics. Sometimes that happens with something like this. And, making a multiplayer version of like one of these games seems like a challenge that looks kind of like you're working together to build something, a little cooperative resource management. It looks a little bit like kind of thing. So,
it's interesting. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah. but I'm not 100% sure, so check it out yourself if you're interested. The Kickstarter is going to go live. I put their drop page from the company, so you can check out the original. But the new Shores is coming out soon, and I wanted to give it a shout out. All right. Now here's a big story.
So, well, yeah.
Got some more?
Yeah, I'm just saying it's like, so the Zook Tycoon itself, the board game, I don't know much about the expansion, but I'm just looking at this. It does seem like, so you are competing to each build your own zoo, it looks like.
Okay, so it's a slight, it's probably the friendly competitive.
Yeah, yeah, so it's like, it's not like ones where you screw each other over, it's just who can do the best, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, like, it reminds me of, I like Everdell a lot, and Everdell is competitive, but it is very, like, relaxed competitive. It's like, oh no, man, you put your person on that 1 out of 10 spots I was looking forward to, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something like that, and I was like, oh, really wanted that spot. Oh well, I can take this other spot that's right there. Yeah. Okay. So here was an interesting thing to hear about, because I think we talked about Demiplane a lot, or just briefly here and there? I know we've mentioned it before.
I have no idea.
Well, I'll put the link here. And I will open up Demiplane to talk about here. So Demiplane is like digital tool kind of stuff, app kind of things, platform,
Okay.
content service, all that kind of stuff.
Demiplane has been hired by Fantasy Grounds. Okay.
Yeah. Demiplane itself is now been purchased by Roll20. They're one of their major people, Adam Bradford, had been hired on by Fantasy Grounds. So after that, then the group itself now is under Roll20, which is an interesting thing because it's a separate kind of set of rules, tool suite, and character builders. And
I see.
It's the kind of thing that you have in like a little bit of D&D Beyond, which, you know, we have D&D Beyond merging eventually with D&D's own virtual tabletop.
Yeah.
That will be kind of where I think we're now going in a direction for Roll20. Because Roll20 had the virtual tabletop, and getting the much more advanced and better tools, I'm not gonna lie, isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, I so love that Roll20 has competition now. They were the only ones for so long, and it made them so stagnant. It's like, they literally did nothing for like 10 years.
Yeah, and a lot of the
and now it's like, right now, they're doing so much more, and it's like, you'd actually be surprised how much you can do. I mean, you have to do a lot of personal programming, because there's not like or you have to like have the APIs and stuff and maybe find other people's, but there's a lot of stuff you can do with Roll20. And I'm very excited that they're building an app.
I think it's
because
a good
that
thing,
might be more interesting.
And I think that's the other thing that, like, when we did sort of see competition, it was usually very high-end competition, so there was nothing
like
its level.
Like,
you know,
it was basically Fantasy Grounds, which you had to pay like $100 for, or Roll20. And even Fantasy Ground like wasn't that great. I'll be honest. It's like their mapping system was very basic.
And I think that's the thing is, like, we haven't had a lot of that stuff at that standard. I think that's the thing that I kind of talk about. Like, when I talk about Roll20, I've always said it's like, it's just the box standard. Here's very easy. Here's something simple to use. Hurrah. Nothing fancy about it.
I preferred them, though, because they at least put a lot more effort into their mapping system, whereas Fantasy Grounds is very much about more campaign organization and, like, tools and, like, how to, like, it's like everything, even maps are, like, a picture you import, and then you put a grid on it, but then it's, like, its own little screen, so you can have, like, multiple maps open and stuff. It's really interesting. I don't know, how much of Fantasy Grounds have you used?
Not a lot. I think I tested it out a number of years ago.
But I did a whole campaign of Curse of Strahd in it. Bought a module and ran it for my friends.
Okay.
It worked pretty well. I just feel like the maps were very lacking, and basically there was no, there's no light stuff. I love the light stuff in Roll20. I think it's the main reason I use it. The whole lighting system. I mean, I'd like to try more. I need to mess around more with like Forge. Is that what it's called? Anyway. Although like it's now requiring a password, and I don't think I wrote it down, so I need to call them or do something. Get back into my account. So yeah, so I haven't messed around with it recently because of that.
I think the thing is, from the next topic I have, I can kind of combine it with this one, the Roll20 and Demiplane, because it kind of is related to this conversation. And that is that, I'll link this also one from anyway, because they've had a few tabletop news, is that Adam Bradford, who is one of the big people behind the original D&D Beyond, who left when Wizards effectively bought it, is now with Fantasy Grounds.
Interesting.
So, I think, because remember, that's the thing is, D&D Beyond was a separate kind of thing, and now, like, with what Wizards building, they're building the D&D Beyond section and the virtual tabletop, and it feels like, with getting the guy from D&D Beyond, or like, Roll20 purchasing Demiplane, both these guys are setting themselves up to be competing with whatever Wizards do. And they're actually setting themselves up for it. Which is such an interesting reaction to Wizards.
Yeah. To be fair, Wizards doesn't feel that threatening right now because they're only going to be doing, 5e. And even
5e,
then, like...
and very, I feel, because of the way they're describing, very fancy,
Yes. I mean, there's only so much you can do with 5e, though. Like, that's the thing. Like, it'll be good. Like, it depends on how much... I'm going to be honest, it will depend on how much... I mean, they're gonna... I don't know. I wasn't impressed based on what I saw, but then again, it's very early right now.
It's very, very early, and the fact is, like... I don't know where the difference between effectively running a video game and running that is. It's sort of like... I think I talked about this back when they originally did it, that, like, it reminded me, on a conceptual level, like how the original Neverwinter Nights had a DM builder in its system, where you could make maps and experiences and run it for people. I tried playing around with it. It wasn't terrible. It was really hard to use, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like there's a balance, and in my opinion, the best way to do it is to allow for complexity, but make it work with simplicity. Roll20 actually does this. You can go... There's a lot you can do with Roll20. And they're making it a little bit more, a lot more plug and play, which I like, because basically you can add in things and stuff, and like you can. I like the fact that they added the custom markers. That was a long time coming, and markers are the things that like have the little symbols next on your tokens, to, like say, oh, poisoned or,
whatever their kind of.
I'm forgetting all the words.
Problems.
Paralyzed, poisoned,
stunned,
incapacitated,
incapacitated, like all of those.
Anyway, those kind of things. Like I'm like, man, people have been asking this for like 5 years, and you guys finally did it. But again, like they've all done all this stuff in the past like 3 years, which is like because all these other things are up and coming, and I do love it. Honestly, I do like Roll20 a lot. I'd like to do. I want to mess around with Forge.
Yeah.
I'd love to see some. Yeah, but so I don't know. I'm definitely curious. I mean, Fantasy Grounds also. I need to look into that again. I haven't looked at it since 2015, probably.
I think it's the point in time where I'm like, I would like to see where these develop now that they have taking these steps to develop.
Yeah.
Is this going to push us in a better direction for these places? If so, I'm going to give a positive, thumbs up, because, as you said, these two really weren't competing with each other. Kind of were, but not really direct, very heavily.
They were the only two on the market. One of them, and they both had different value to them. But honestly, Fantasy Grounds was just super expensive. It was like, honestly, it's like $100 for the GM edition, so your players don't have to pay $40 for the game, for Fantasy Grounds.
Yeah, it was Fantasy Grounds more expensive, but offered that was our our fancy pack. So you could go fancy with Fantasy Grounds or simplistic with Roll20, and they weren't really competition for each other. And now they're both going in directions that I think are developing and putting them more like a combo that and D&D Beyond experience all in one, which
in fact, like one thing I really liked about Fantasy Grounds that I would love for Roll20 to give some kind of option for is basically they had a sort of like DM screen type thing where you could look at an overview of what your players were like for AC and health and stuff.
Yeah.
And you just had an overview, and I'm like, man, that'd be so nice in Roll20 to have.
It's an interesting place because again, like Roll20 is already positioning themselves a lot stronger. With their merger with Drive-Thru RPG last year and this now.
They merged. I forgot about that.
Yes, I did too until I saw the article and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that now. That was a thing that happened, and I think we talked about it a little bit.
Probably, yeah.
So
yeah,
it's an interesting place that everything is kind of developing to at this point in time.
Yeah, so. The virtual tabletop world is becoming interesting, and I'm very happy about it because, I'm someone who's totally down to actually program things to make things. I hate Roll20 though because it requires CSS, and I hate CSS for custom sheets at least. I hate CSS so much. It's the worst language. I can handle HTML. I can handle JavaScript. I hate CSS.
Oh god, what was it that Faithless, who's going to bed now, spent 3 days creating a custom character sheet for Shadowrun. So I'm like, oh god, more power to you on that one.
I've been trying to kind of do that for Traveler, because I've started to really develop a lot I mentioned like Traveler's Tactical, but I've also personally started to develop like kind of my own rules for it for when I run it again. I'm not really changing that much. I'm just kind of breaking it down into what it kind of already is and just changing the way it works. And adding a few more basic actions for players to do that are will make things a little bit more tactical. But again, that's if I want to actually make it tactical. It depends on the players I have for when I run the game. If I don't have tactical players, I'll just probably leave it as is.
This is definitely the kind of point in time where I do not mind things consolidating. Consolidation in the industry, because these are very kind of different things combining together to form something a little bit bigger. So.
I don't really like the idea of consolidation. I actually think that's problematic. In fact, that tends to lead. Yeah, in fact, that's kind of what's happening with all of your board game articles right now, is everything's being kind of merged into one thing. Which is the problem.
These are very different things consolidating. That's why I'm a little bit more like, okay, this is fine. But if it was like, oh, Roll20 is like purchasing a bunch of other VTTs, I'd be like, ooh, now we're talking about something that I'm like, this is the direction.
Yeah. But I see kind of where you're going. It's more about one company diversifying to make their thing better.
Yes, rather than one company
trying to buy out all buying everyone else to be the only company. That's how you get Ticketmaster, who was literally forced. I think they're still trying to repeal it, and it's not anything's happened yet. But I saw in the news that they're literally, because we talked about them on a while back.
Oh yeah, we did with the one of the shows.
Because there's a show where it's they had no option, and people were paying thousands of dollars for tickets because they had the surge pricing thing. But Ticketmaster apparently had to have they're literally forcing the American government is forcing Ticketmaster to split their company, so they're no longer going to control everything.
They're putting an anti-monopoly suit on because they are a monopoly, and they're finally putting their foot down. So
yeah.
Yay, no monopolies. We need competition.
And that's the thing, it's Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 were the only ones, but they weren't really competing because, let's be real, for casual use, Roll20 was the only one in the past.
Yeah, if you want something just casual, go to Roll20. If you want something a little fancy, go to Fantasy Grounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Fantasy Ground, I'm not sure how they even stayed in business up until now, because like before it was literally let's pay a bunch for something that was still kind of meh.
It was fancier than Roll20, and I think that's what we had. It was the two choices we had. We were like, it's sort of like, I guess it's like, oh man, that car has, leather seats. Aw, damn.
Oh, no. I think it's even more like, that car has air conditioning.
Oh, holy shit. We splurged, we got the AC.
Yeah, I think that's a much better. It's just got a few extra bells and whistles that are like, yeah, it makes things more comfortable, but it's all like, it still can be a rust bucket.
Yeah, it still can be a rust bucket.
Yeah. I'd love to look more at them again now. I think they'll be a lot more interesting.
True. I think it's both of them have gone in a lot of directions and kind of like implications improved stuff in a lot of ways. So I'd be interested to see the directions, because like I've seen how Roll20 has done improvements. So yeah, how has Fantasy Ground increased and improved? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. We can move on. I do have a few more small topics today to talk about. And first off is, again, because I don't know if it's just a quiet week or I just couldn't find news. That's what I'm going to say for this. WizKids has a new product that, hey, I haven't talked about WizKids in a long time because you never can notice other than plushies when they have new products. That's an actual board game. It's a card game. Star Trek card game. Captain's Chair. Yeah. It's a head-to-head
card game.
Yeah. It's 240 cards. And
that's a lot of cards, though.
Yeah.
Oh, when it comes to okay, and there's also tokens. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, I thought it was just like a card game.
It is a card game, but it's like your standard like board game card game. So it's the big card games.
Yeah. It's one of those card-based games that have a lot of extra bells and whistles. Contents: 240 cards, 32 ship tokens, 12 automated command cards, 2-player aid card, 4. Yeah, okay. Markers, tokens.
Yeah.
50 plus tokens. Tokens. Okay, yeah. So it's one of these, and a rule book.
It seems to be a 1 or 2 player game. I guess there's 1 player rules for playing against, because there's a solo rule book for playing against yourself, but they say it's head to head. So I'm curious. Well, even with head to head, it could be more than 2 players. I'm not going to say out of nowhere there's just 2 players, but at very least it's minimum 2 players, where you go head to head with an opponent and you're taking on a starship captain. They are providing a 6 to begin with. If it's successful, I'm sure they could put more kind of captains and have more kind of cards and stuff to go along with them. Who knows? But with 6 different captains, it does feel like there could be the possibility of more than 2 players. Until I see the information about it.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't actually say.
That's
a pre-order, but I feel like normally, things will say, 2 to 4 players. It's usually advertised.
Yeah.
It's actually an important piece of information, because if it's 4 to 8 players and you're like, well, I only have 3 friends, it's like.
I'm gonna see if I can. Does Board Game Geek have a? It's good store. Board Game Geek does have a site for this. Let's see. They say 1 to 2 players and 60 to 120 minutes. So I'm going to assume just from either information that they have or from whatever it is, that's what it is. But we'll have to see. Even if it's a 2-player game, it's fine. Head-to-head games are fun. I always liked Netrunner. It's a classic, cool card game kind of game where you get a lot of packs and stuff. So, and I'm a fan of Star Trek. I like some Star Trek stuff. So, an interesting strategic card game might be fun. So, I probably would like to see more on this, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. I guess. for it to come out. I guess is the best way to say.
This gives us a lot of D&D miniatures, I just noticed.
They do a lot of miniatures. Miniatures, plushies, and models. Like, you know, I would say like bigger, not miniature models. And so they've gone variety and some like things like dice and stuff too. So they occasionally still put out board games, but not so much anymore. Very variety. They diversify, which I guess works.
Who's WizKids under?
Our great and powerful Dark Lord Asmodee, who's under, I guess, themselves now because the what's his face broke apart. Who would own them? We talked about that.
Okay.
So I don't actually.
I don't know,
They were, I know, part of Asmodee, but I don't know if they still are or if how things have changed with the break apart. There's so much going on that I do not know where WizKids sits right now in the grand scheme of it.
Yeah.
Someone asked it.
I'm curious where you'd get. Okay. Oh, okay. So it seems that I was curious about this. Sorry, this is just an off the cuff kind of thing. Yeah, so apparently WizKids do the official D&D minis.
Yes, they do the official D&D minis.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, which is weird. That's actually really weird to me. Hasbro is a toy company. Why did they outsource to WizKids? That's what I was like when I saw that. I was very confused.
Doesn't actually do a lot of like
minis and board games.
Minis and board games, yes.
Yeah, you're right. They do. They do have a lot of board games, but yeah, I can see that's interesting to me. Sorry, this is something I just noticed that I'm like, that's so weird.
So currently they're part of the NECA, it looks like, WizKids is. Well, that's at least where they've ended up, which is the National Entertainment Collectibles Association. Which I guess is good because they make all those little collectibles and toy stickers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, the massive acquisition of WizKids assets. Okay, so Topps had WizKids for a while too. Wow. WizKids has just been passed around by a lot of people, apparently. I don't know.
That's a cute team-up plushie. I kind of want it. Anyway.
Yeah, apparently Topps purchased it too. Wow, there's just been some weird things. I guess WizKids has been a weird spot that I didn't realize. But cool, anyway, you know, neat. They still do some board games. Even though they don't do a lot of them.
Yep.
So I think we talked about this.
I mean, that kind of makes sense because they're owned by companies that do other board games, so it's like...
Yeah.
And they probably make a lot of money off miniatures and plushies, I'll be honest. That's a big business, miniatures.
So the Mutant Year Zero skirmish game, Zone Wars, is out now. So I think we briefly talked about this, and, you know, just as a summary, Mutant Year Zero, it's a role-playing game system, but it's also got some other things. There's a video game based on it. But it's a skirmish game. I would kind of put it in comparison to something like, if you would talk like Wasteland Warfare from Modiphius for Fallout, and they do some like Fallout, both miniatures games and role-playing games too. This is probably more on the skirmish side than the role-playing side, but I'm unsure how much they are compatible, because it does say it is compatible with Mutant Year Zero Tabletop, so I assume there are rules to play it on its own, or to do basically like a little bit of that Wasteland Warfare, where Wasteland Warfare is kind of like a little bit of the RPG and a little bit of the skirmish game combined. And so, like, you could play out, like, oh, we're having a battlefield where our characters are also doing something.
Yeah.
So, it's neat. You can play it on its own or combine it with stuff, which is cool. So, yeah. Year Zero is a very interesting, like, I know a little bit about the system, but it's been around for a while now, and I would recommend, you know, checking out if you're interested. Free League has done a bunch of stuff for it. It's modern version, because it's based on a much older role-playing game. It's like a newer edition, technically. I don't know what it is. It's just based on a newer edition. I'm not 100% sure on that one, how it's being fun. Because it looks like, just reading up on their stuff here, the original Mutant was published in 1984. Oh, and, okay, so this is when Free League got a hold of it in 2014, they made this version. So, and so, yeah, that's the version of the board game. Whatever edition's been out for 10 years now. For Mutant Year Zero, the edition of it. That's good too. Okay, so I got one more news topic, and it's gonna hit into our deeper discussion topic for today. So, and this is because DC-20 was funded in a single minute. Its Kickstarter is funded. Now, Joe has funded this, and I have seen someone talk about this for 10 minutes, and then I talked with Joe for about half an hour, get a little bit more information on the rules and stuff like this. So, the thing is that I heard someone say, and this was an interesting thing, is this game system feels a lot more like an evolution to something like 5e than 5e's new thing is.
Yeah.
You know. Because I'm going to say this here. If you look at what the expanded universe around 5e is currently, we have D&D 1, or just D&D, whatever they're going to call it now, you know, which, the more I've looked at that, I have backed away from my calling it 5.5. I feel like a lot more now, compared to like what someone said once, it's $180 DLC. Which, it kind of is, because we are getting a slight, like, the only book that really is going to be different is hopefully the DMG. The Player's Handbook.
No, I mean, Player's Handbook and the DMG
will be a percentage of new information with some of the old information, with some also, like, because they're saying, like, oh, we're going to have so many of these, like, archetypes, you know, for our classes. Well, some of them are just the old archetypes. They're not really refreshing. Some of them are, you know, oh, hey, this was in Tasha's. So, now you don't have to purchase Tasha's. Well, sorry, at this point in time, most people have purchased Tasha's or know someone that purchased Tasha's. It's been long enough.
I actually haven't.
I know people that don't, you know, that kind of thing.
I'm just saying because I just don't have room for more books, but...
Well, yeah. But, I mean, it's the kind of thing that, like, it is both a reprint to a degree, but also has some new stuff. Is it going to be $60 worth of new stuff? At glance right now, I don't know if I feel like it's going to be. Like me, I will purchase it probably because, honestly speaking, it's kind of in my job wheelhouse at this point in time. I do tabletop-related stuff, so I probably will. At very least that book. But yeah, when we look at a lot of the playtests they did, they went back and forth whether a lot of things that they were changed, some of them end up being back where they were. So that, yes, there are some changes here and there, but there's not a lot of major
too many people throw a hissy fit at certain changes. I
understand, but also, like, I'm like, yes. Well, they went weird directions sometimes, and I'm like, cool, this has gone too far. You could take it back a little bit, and it would be fine change. And instead of taking it back a little bit, they reversed it completely. I'm like, yeah, you took it too far and people didn't like it. I understand that. I was fine with it, whatever, you know. But, like, it was one or the other, and they couldn't find that middle ground, which I think would have worked for some decisions. So, you know.
I mean, I think they bounced back around on some things. Like, what's so funny to me is that, like, reading through this, it sounds so much like Pathfinder 2e. Just looking at kind of the baseline. Like, that's the thing. I don't know what people have against, like, I don't know why that, like, you know, Lightning and Momo, like, hate Pathfinder 2e so much. Like, Lightning's just like, oh, it's too many Lightning does.
Lightning, like, Momo, I do agree on something that Momo says there, is, unfortunately, this is a problem that I'm hoping Player Core, because I still have to get one. probably not going to get that until the end of the year during PAX Unplugged, because that's my really good chance to buy things in person.
Yeah.
You know? But what I'm saying is, from what I've like, this is the thing that I had as a complaint with the original version of it, that they made a lot of things that didn't need to be conditions. Like, I'm surprised, I'm aware, I'm normal. You know, like, those were all conditions related to surprise rounds.
Yeah.
They didn't really need to be. That was kind of weird. They did a bunch of stuff like that, where, like, there are still the normal conditions, but a lot of other things kind of became what could be called conditions under the rules, and I felt like that was a little, like, unnecessary. Yeah. It wasn't terrible. I never minded it. And a lot of times, it doesn't really matter. It was just a weird design choice, I felt like, in some cases. I'd have to check the
they got rid of surprised, which is funny, because 5e did surprised as a condition rather than as like a round, whereas now I think, yeah, if they did do the surprise condition, then they definitely changed it back to a round kind of thing. Because that's not in here.
I just have to see what they've done. They probably have done a little bit of things of like streamlining some stuff because they basically took a look at what they did, and they didn't have to do like major updates, just minor things. Like if it's not a condition anymore, it's still the same thing, but not a condition. That's fine, you know.
Yeah, and some of them are more, you know, and there's like 5 which are clearly just the emotions. Then you've got like the 4 that are detection. So it's like, you know, observed, hidden. Undetected.
Oh yeah, those are the observed, hidden, and kind of stuff like that. That's just like a little bit like it comes up in like theoretically, but doesn't really come up, and I always found that kind of weird. It's sort of like it's kind of there. Again, it's just some ideas that are interesting.
It's more that like that's the thing is I don't get why this is a problem. Like, if it, like, you know it's a thing, all you have to do is know that it's a thing, and then, like, if it comes up, you can go and look at it. Like, observed. If a creature takes measures to avoid detection, such as using stealth to hide, it can become hidden or detected instead of observed.
Okay, so I went to Archives of Nethys because it does display the player core stuff now, it's updated to it, and they show the groups of conditions. The attitudes, death and dying, degrees of detection, lowered abilities, and senses. If I would talk about how conditions were in Pathfinder 1e, I'm going to tell you, it would have just been lowered abilities and senses. Those were the only 2 sections in Pathfinder 1e when it comes to conditions. All the other stuff would have been parts of other things.
Parts of the
rules. Now, the idea of having attitudes, death and dying, and degrees of detection as conditions kind of works, because it both does and does not. Because I think, like, the attitudes, it removes and separates it from where it was before, which was all diplomacy. It was all under diplomacy. Now it's over here, so it can apply to more than one thing than diplomacy, because it did technically in Pathfinder 1st edition. It applied to, like, intimidation and bluff sometimes, and some, and some other, like, more social-related things. Attitudes did come up.
Yeah, outside of spells.
It was like. But what I'm saying is, it's both good and bad. I think. I think it needed to be its own separate set of 5 conditions. No, but I don't mind it.
To be fair, it would be nice if they grouped them.
Oh, they group them. They group them on Archives of Nethys.
Yeah, but like in the book, it's literally just here are all of them. You know, it's just like, yay.
Yeah. So that's a problem with the book itself, rather than the actual material. It's like, presented in not the best way.
Oh, here is undetected. Oh,
yeah, like so, like. Well, apparently on 443 they have the groups, which is after them.
They list the groups, but in Archives of Nethys you can just click on it and go to the one you want. Whereas in this you have to flip through to find it. So it's like in the book it would have been nice if because they're so integral to like each other, it would have been nice,
If they were grouped into these separate groups in the order there, yes, that would have been a better way of doing it. Yeah. And so, like, I think that's the thing, too, is, like, the degrees of detection,
Anyway.
the death and dying. I'm kind of like, they're expanded, they're interesting. I don't know if they had to be all conditions. I can understand why it's something that puts people off.
So,
Because when I first came to it, before I played 2nd edition, I was put off by that. Then I played 2nd edition in it, and ran a little bit of it, and...
I mean, because my thought of this, of that, is just like, oh, they're there if you need them. And they're not like that integral. I mean, they're kind of are, but it's kind of this thing where it's all like, Pathfinder 1E had like 3 times as many conditions.
Not really. I think they had like 15 conditions, which would have been 3 of these lists at most.
What did I say? I said 3 times, right? Or did I say
you
5?
said 3? You said 3 times the entire list, which would have been like 75.
Yeah, that's true. That's not that many. Anyway, yeah, it's probably like double. Yeah, but yeah, so it's just like, part of me is just like, if that puts you off of 2E, why doesn't that put you off of Pathfinder? They have a lot of the same stuff. Yeah, but no, it's just kind of this thing where it's like, I feel like Pathfinder 2E, I think it has some things that could be turnoffs. I don't quite know why conditions are... Wait.
It's an idea of the
Yeah.
complexity sometimes. I did count them. There's 34, which is more than there are here. But, again, what I think is also something that happened here is some of the conditions under, like, the lowered abilities and senses are actually, like, 2 or 3 of the ones from 1E combined, because they just do degrees of them. Because it's basically now, you get a penalty, and it's a number-based penalty, and that increases as you go. So it's sort of like, you know, like, oh, I have Clumsy 1 or Clumsy 4, you know, like, yeah, so they combined a bunch of them together, and then there's some of them that are also just non-existent anymore because of the rules. Yeah. But yeah, so it was basically, it was similar in amount. But
yeah, I
it's
think
a perception.
Pathfinder, I agree it's a perception. I think it's just, I think what really, in my opinion, is that because D&D had 4E in the middle, the jump from 3.5 to 5E wasn't as sharp. Whereas, like, for Pathfinder, what people liked about Pathfinder 2E actually doesn't have as much of. Or, like, that complexity, that ability to kind of really manipulate the rules that 3.5 and Pathfinder had. Whereas, like, it has a lot more of the do what you want kind of attitude that 5e has, you know?
I think the thing is that, you know, when we're talking about this here, because this does bring us to the big talk at hand. We'll get back to DC 20 in a minute.
Yeah.
But Pathfinder versus Pathfinder 2e are very different systems. It's not necessarily an evolution of the system, but a lot of the themes in the system which exist within it. The ideas of feats and traits that you have for your character, and you have options. Hey, we came up with alternate ancestry traits in first edition, or race traits as they were still called then. You could take alternates, you kind of mix and match. Oh, hey now you just take feats that represent that at different points in your character creation. So no longer, you don't even have those racial feats anymore, you just basically kind of build a version of the character. Same kind of classes. You don't take archetypes, you take like, oh, I take these couple feats, I make this archetype. You know, it's an evolution, it's different.
It's very much build your own class, I feel like. Which makes it super malleable, but I feel like that did get rid of some of the fun of like finding that hidden gem of a character that I feel like a lot of people who play Pathfinder love.
Here's the thing. I understand that, but as a GM who has dealt with some people before, fuck that.
I agree. No, I agree.
Oh my god. The people that I've had bring out some weird-ass shit, which somehow either doesn't work or just gets them killed, and it's completely ridiculous. I'm like, please don't. Like, when I deal with your guys' stuff, I'm like, this is easy. Ah, man, you got a really high AC because you got some abilities. Ah, that's fine. Ah, you're not like super tank wizard who can't die. Or sorry, it was tank sorcerer.
Fireball.
So, tank sorcerer who had like like fucking like a billion hit points and set it up for like, oh hey, I cast this fast healing spell. Oh hey, I have this ability that whenever I get a fast healing, it increases by my goddamn fucking con modifier. Oh hey, I cast like what was it like the fiendish like regeneration, or I can't remember what its name is. I regenerate fucking like 15 hit points a turn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, you're unkillable. Great.
Unkillable through a Pathfinder adventure path.
Death effects can still kill them, but they have a hard constitution, which most of the time those are fort saves, meaning it's very unlikely to hit them.
Yeah, no,
But
I'm just saying, it's like you could, and where I have an issue with Pathfinder is that if you have one player who does that, suddenly you can't properly balance encounters without them steamrolling or everyone else dying.
Well, I mean, the good news about that character is they were unkillable, but weren't really super threat.
Yeah,
because,
there are some who are both, which is annoying.
And there's some other like weird builds that are technically legal that you just don't want. There are broken builds. I mean, there are broken builds in like fucking 5e, plenty of them.
Yeah.
What I heard about one earlier today, actually, which was very interesting, which was being a what was it, a Bladesinger Wizard Barbarian?
Yeah, that sounds about right, actually.
Yeah, because you could get like 24 AC in 5th edition at like 5th level. Because the Constitution magic item is one that you can get at that level. It's the rarity that you get. So you get like a con of like 20. And it's like a con, you get like a con of like 22 or something, I think it is. Something like that. And so you add your the wizards, or I'm sorry, the barbarian's unarmored stacks with the Bladesinger's bonus to AC.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And you are a dex int. So you activate the Bladesinger thing, then you activate your Barbarian Rage the next turn, so you can give up spells to reduce damage, and then you're a dex character. A Dexbarian? Doesn't matter. Using that for the resistance to damage, using spells to get rid of that. You don't cast any spells on yourself. You just stab and murder people with like, just high dex and a lot of ability to attack, It's just like, what the hell?
The only downside of that build is that you have to be hit constantly. Because if you're not attacked and you don't deal damage with a strength weapon, you lose your rage.
Yeah.
So,
You can always take one of those weapons that's both strength, because it's just a strength weapon, not a strength actual attack. Because the question is then, is the wording mean I just have to attack with a weapon that can use strength? Or normally uses strength, because it's one that's both strength or dex.
Mm-hmm. What's our topic? Did you say what our topic was?
Additions, the good and bad of new ones.
Got it.
It was
okay.
addition-based things, and I was talking about it because we've been talking about these. Anyway, getting back away from that kind of stuff. So we can use Pathfinder 2nd Edition as an interesting idea of there's some good and bad in moving from 1st edition to 2nd edition. The thing is, it still has a lot of the crunchiness, but it gets rid of a lot of the fluff in a lot of ways. It still has fluff. Let me tell you, there's a bunch of shit in 2nd edition Pathfinder that you take only in your game.
Oh no, sorry. You only have to attack a hostile creature. You don't have to attack them with strength. It's just...
it makes even more gross.
You just don't get the bonus to damage unless you're using strength.
I feel like if we would look at it as a whole, 2nd edition was a good 2nd edition of a system. It upgraded it, it fixed things, it improved things, it streamlined things very well.
Pathfinder 2e?
Pathfinder 2e from 1,
Yeah. No, I agree. I really want to play it now. Like, after getting the books and, like, reading through it, I really want to play it now.
Like, mechanically, there is a lot of changes. Like, it's got a different scaling system, but some of the basics of how the numbers work and why the numbers work, it makes sense logically, and you can understand it if you're going from one to the other. So, okay.
And a lot of stuff I've read about people who play it and how it's played is that it actually feels like you need a lot more teamwork because it's a lot of small bonuses which stack, whereas Pathfinder is a lot of bigger bonuses which don't.
Yeah.
Pathfinder 1e. And so by 2e being a lot of small bonuses that stack, it means you can actually, like, your party can actually, like, buff someone to the point of where they're good, but everyone has to be helping, you know, or etc.
It's sort of like I played a bard character in the adventure I did for like we went through like half the Abomination Vaults books. Being a bard was very interesting because you're a buff character and you do a lot of buff abilities, plus a couple of. I'm sorry, I'm just going to talk about it again just for a second. The spell, which I have to look up the name of it. Sorry, I have to look up this name.
Okay, I'll continue reading about
hilarious.
DC-20.
I think it is. Where was it? It's not an ending. Was it 4th level? Anyway, it was a spell that you cast, and in like 2 turns, someone would just take like 50 damage. You basically predicted an accident. You pull a what's the fucking the horror movie where like they get out of death and death.
Oh, Final Destination.
You Final Destination someone with a bard spell. It was hilarious.
What level spell is that?
I'd have to. I can open my character. I think I have to open my character sheet to find it. My old sheet. It was like 4th level spell. It might have been or something. What the fuck game is that? Older games. What's this one? Yeah. I can't. It's a game I'd have to restore. But I think I have a cat. Oh no, I can go in there.
Are they arcane? Are bards arcane?
They're occult. So
okay,
occult. There's my character. Again, the sheet might have been updated or something. There have definitely been some changes to it overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did change some of those.
Inevitable disaster.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find it.
Inevitable disaster.
Inevitable disaster. It's a rank 5. That's what it was.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, in 1d4 rounds later, they take 55 damage.
Yeah.
With a base fortitude save. So it's sort of like you Final Destination someone. I mean, like, that's kind of cool. It's 1d4 rounds. You're planning for combat, but it's just hilarious that they have a spell like that. And I think that's the kind of flavor I really like when it comes to that. But okay. I do want to talk about
if they succeed. If they critical succeed, they take no damage. Successes, they take half damage. Failures, they take full damage. Critical failure, you take double damage. You can do if they fail by 10 or more, they can take 110 damage.
Yep. And you just like point at someone 60 feet away, and you're like, you. It's a curse, and it's a fortitude-based curse, and they're like, la 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 la. Yeah, I just like it. I think it was basically like we were in like a pottery shop, and like our GM just basically, when I cast on someone who was like in a closet that we're fighting, like they popped out, and I casted on them when they were trying to like snipe us, like. A shell fell down, and like all the stuff fell on them and like cracked them in the head. You know, it was inevitable. Mm-hmm. It was, a Final Destination. But I think here, going back to the big discussion, and I want to talk about. I can talk about DC-20 a little bit, and I want to preface this.
We can go back to that for a little bit.
I want to preface this though. When we look at the evolution D&D a lot, we've kind of talked about it. How 4th edition was an interesting direction because it didn't feel like the edition before. It's not a bad system. I like 4th edition, but I can understand why it was putting people off. It was a huge departure. Other than like certain small aspects, there was a lot of differences in the way that 4th edition worked. There was some similarity, but yeah,
it was the same. It was like the same. It was like. The same cover on a completely different like object. It's like
Yes, That's what it would be, because like the characters had a lot of similarity. You had some skills, you had your same 6 stats, you had some feats, you had abilities, but yeah, like it was a completely different cover for that entire thing, and so it was like it put people off. Yeah, and 5th edition's a return to basically 5th edition is much more of a evolution of 3.5, 3rd edition, Pathfinder, because Pathfinder is an evolution of 3.5, you know. And just taking a lot of information, processing, simplifying, which isn't necessarily bad. You can go simple, you can get more complex. You can go both ways. Sometimes simpler is better, but sometimes you want to add some levels of complexity. As certainly a lot of games, as you go on, they add levels of complexity anyway, as more stuff comes in. So, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing to dip so low into the simplicity. But it did mean, as low as 5th edition is, we kind of want to step back up and want to become more complex. You have an audience now. I feel like...
I think there's some truth and some untruth to that.
I agree on that one. I think my statement, like, as I kind of said...
Yeah, because I think that depends a lot more on... Because I think you still want simplicity for newer players. Which is why I think 5e makes a really good gateway drug into...
Here's the thing I'm going to say also.
RPGs.
They could have pulled a beginning of D&D. Because I didn't realize this until like a couple months ago. When I learned about it more. I always assumed we went from 1st edition to AD&D to 2nd edition AD&D. What I didn't realize until I was learning about Nistara and stuff was we went from 1st edition AD&D, and both of them were being published at the same time.
Yes, there was a... Yeah, actually, that's an interesting thought.
And it wasn't until 2nd edition AD&D that both of them were released.
Yeah.
As basically an evolution of what AD&D was. But, you know, one of them was going to be kind of like a certain type of story, and the other was going to be a different type of kind of gameplay. You know, you had your 2 different types for different types of games at the time. And you could still do that. You could have 5th edition become your kind of like gateway beginner's box kind of thing, where you're publishing like the black and red boxes of 1st edition again, you know, back in the day, that version of it. Because it has been out for 10 years. And then you could have a new 6th edition, which doesn't have to be a lot more complex. It could just be a couple of steps away. It could just add a few more layers. So sort of like, now you've learned this. You can kind of go into something a little bit more, you know, crunchy, something a little bit more better for those people that are doing longer campaigns, that are going to be in it for more than just a pick up and play.
Yeah.
Because again, like, if someone asks me, like, would you want to do a 5e campaign? I'm like, I wouldn't want to run one. If you want to run one, that's fine. Like, you know, Lightning and Momo run a 5e campaign. But they've changed a lot of rules. You know, they basically made their own version of 5e to run 5e. And I think that's the kind of thing. Base 5e, I've run some campaigns at it. I had plenty of issues that are kind of like, I'd rather just do Pathfinder 2nd edition, or another system.
Oh, I'd rather do 5e than Pathfinder 1e. I don't want to run Pathfinder 1e ever. I tried.
I wouldn't want to. I'll let you talk for a second here. I wouldn't want to do Pathfinder 1e anymore without using pre-made stuff.
Because like, every time I've tried to run Pathfinder 1e, one of my players does the thing that we were talking about earlier, where they make some kind of broken class, and I'm just like, I don't want to do this, you know.
Yeah.
So it's always like one or multiple players. Oh gosh, one of them literally made a sort of like I thought it'd be fun to run a all kobold campaign in Pathfinder, like a small like episodic thing, and one of them came to me with a synthesis summoner.
Oh god, yeah, you know,
to basically get around all the kobold weaknesses.
Yeah, no, there are 2 types of summoner that if you come to me and say I want to play these, I will tell you no. Synthesis and the Master Summoner. Both of those. Slap, no, go away with that. Those are terrible. Yeah. There's a reason why they are banned in a lot of places.
Yeah, because like my whole thought was like, oh, you'll be like weak characters, it'll be funny, it'll be kind of more of a silly one-shot kind of thing, and he makes this thing that's like super overpowered. I'm like, that's not the point of what I was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because like kobolds have a bunch of weak physical stats, so I'm just gonna get rid of those with synthesis owner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but I want to run 2e. I like 5e as is. I definitely probably the biggest thing I dislike about things like 5e and Pathfinder is the swinginess of 1d20 system. Which is why when I ran 5e, I did a 2d10. That's the only thing I really changed, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think, certainly speaking...
Which is an optional rule anyway.
Again, like, I think that's, again, another advantage of 2nd edition, is because it comes down to smaller numbers in a lot of ways, and maybe the big swings don't matter as much sometimes. You know?
Yeah, so 2E, I don't know if I'd hate a 2d20 system, or what, because the problem is because they have a lot more high good and high bad stuff, doing a 2d10 might cause issues.
Yeah.
So that's one thing where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do it if I do run a 2E game, Pathfinder 2E game.
I just think the swings of the dice don't make as much of a difference as much. They will be interesting, cool things, but it's going to be rarer that it's going to be like he critically fails his inevitable destruction check or something like that. You know what I was talking about. There's an inevitable disaster, which is really funny, but again, inevitable disaster takes 1d4 rounds. So you're setting that up and have to survive for 1 to 4 more rounds after you cast it for it to actually do maybe that cool massive amount of damage.
Yeah, to be fair, I will say that honestly is definitely one of those ones which you try and do to surprise your enemies, like you're hiding, you do it, and then you start combat once it happens. But then you can't debuff the enemy to make them more likely to critically fail, you know? So
well, they make their save when the time comes up, so that's why it's
that's what I mean. Like you can't. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like you can't. Yeah, but also you could roll a 1, so. Yeah.
But 1 only drops down if you have enough of a bonus. You could still succeed at a 1. It only drops down by 1 tier. Yeah.
Maybe? You're probably right. I don't remember.
Natural 1 or a natural 20 does not necessarily mean a critical fail, critical success. It either drops or raises the tier of your success by 1.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't know the system well enough by heart, because again, I've never run it, so I'd like learn those rules as I run it.
Because
but,
normally...
you're probably right.
Critical success is 10 over, critical fail is 10 below. And, like, if you roll 1, you drop it down by 1 level. So if, like, you have an insane fortitude bonus, where you would maybe get, like, a critical success on something, and you roll a 1, it's just a success. Or if it would have just been a success, it becomes a failure. But, you know... Yeah. It does make it less brutal for those rolls, especially if you're very good at this. It could still suck, but yeah.
So I was like, I don't know about that.
Also, there's nothing below critical failure or critical success, so it's the other thing of like, if you're already going to have that, it doesn't punish you anymore. Oh man, rolling below a 5 is going to be critical failure for me. I rolled a 1, still a critical failure.
Yeah. No, I really like the idea of this. I'm looking at
I can talk a little bit about DC because I've gone a little bit through Joe and stuff. But I don't think it's
as great as you're like. I mean, well, okay. I'll let you go first.
Okay, so I personally think I would love to test this out to really get an idea.
100%. I'm backing this.
The person, so Joe talked to me about a bunch about it, but I also saw, and I would recommend if you want to look into it and learn a little bit about it, D&D Shorts did 10-minute video. Okay, so I saw his video on it. I'm probably sure there's probably some other people that are going to do a video on it, like, you know, I can't remember anybody's names right now, you know, for all in the TTRPG sphere, because I'm great that way, and I can forget names constantly. But anyway, so, the kind of evolution we've seen post 5e, because I really feel like D&D 1, I'll just keep with that, you know, for now, just because it's easy to determine it. really isn't a lot of evolution to the system. You know, I don't know if there's enough that I would consider the 5.5 or just be 5th edition with a fresh coat of paint. Because again, Pathfinder 2e did that. Pathfinder 2e player core is that with a fresh coat of paint, but also, you know, removing all the D&D stuff because they kind of had to.
Yeah, they literally but they're also literally just call it revised.
Yeah.
They're not calling it 2.5.
A bunch of what people are putting out, though, is kind of based around the 5e sphere. Kobold Press, Tales of Valiant, is kind of like a 5.5. If you kind of look at some of the systems and stuff that they do. You know, it is taking 5th editions, a lot of that kind of core of it, and evolving it in a direction. But it's still kind of very 5th edition. And I think that's what a lot of people are kind of doing now, is taking things that they are making their own 5.5s that are actually 5.5s in a lot of ways.
Yes, I've seen a lot of that.
Is this something that could be called like more comparable to 6th edition? That's what I heard it compared to by a few people kind of talking about it. And D&D Shorts was one of them that kind of like said it kind of feels more like that as an evolution of that. But that might be up to you too. So, let's take a look at D20, or DC20, I'm sorry, because it's packed, or funded with goddamn 23 days to go, where they wanted 20,000 and they have over 1 million. So, they are funded, it's out there. I think Joe got in, that he was able to get some, like, copies, some, like playtests stuff. Which I don't know if, like, he had, like, an early bird thing where they did some playtests with the software and things like that. And he put in for a pretty high funding, so he's going to get physical books and stuff on that, too.
Yeah, I'm doing that, too.
He did the 95, I think he said. He's like, it's a big cost, but he was like, he liked a lot of what he saw, you know, so he went with that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, 95 is digital. No, 95 is digital only. It's everything but digital.
Everything but digital, okay.
Yeah. I just did the deluxe physical, which is like 200 to get everything physical.
So, okay, it's a 4 attribute system, okay?
Yes,
that's kind of interesting.
Which is fine. There's actually it's probably like, you know, actually, what did they say?
Hey, guess what?
Might, agility, intelligence, charisma. Yeah, that makes sense. That's
you know those stat numbers? They're just going to be the modifiers.
Yep, 2e actually changed to that in their revised thing.
Okay, that's good too. So it's just a modifier number, you know, and I think you can go negatives into attributes too in this case, you know, if you're low at it, so you have a penalty, and then you add it to stuff. An interesting aspect of it is too, whatever class you are, you choose one main stat, and it can be any of those 4.
Oh, interesting.
You can be Might Wizard, who gains your magic power through the power of your physical body, rather than your mind. You
sure.
You train your body and then so master magic, you know.
Okay. I mean, that kind of feels a little bit weird to me.
Or you could be an int fighter or something that uses strategy.
Yeah, okay. There's definitely going to be, if you're just adding, like, your int damage, that makes me feel like the stats are kind of pointless, but let's continue.
No, what it is you have the different stats, and the different stats apply to, like, skills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for your class, you have a primary that can be any. So the classes, that doesn't matter about stats as much.
This still feels a little bit weird to me. I feel like...
It is a little bit weird, but you only have 4 stats. Remember that. So you only have 4 stats.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you know, certainly speaking, the skills might be where it comes in that you're using these differently.
Yeah, no, I know. That's basically what it is pick the stats you want for your skills and then play your class how you want. It's just kind of this weird thing where it's like a strength wizard? Sure.
An
I feel like it kind
fighter, an int barbarian.
It was funny, it's like that makes a little, well, int barbarian doesn't make sense to me, but int fighter does, you know, like that's actually
int fighter does.
1e actually has some of that.
I like the charisma barbarian, where you're like kind of like leading people in the battle maybe or something like that, or like, you know, that kind of thing, maybe. I don't know. There's interesting ideas that like it's an interesting concept that you kind of have to like explore why that is for your character. This is the kind of thing to talk about. Okay. It's similar to 3 Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's an action point system. It's a 4 action point system. Rather.
Yeah, it's a 4 action point system, but you also have to use reactions as part of your action points.
Okay.
So you have to save your action points, which is, or depends. What's funny is my friend, I mentioned my friend is like making his own game. He actually does that. He actually makes it so your reactions require action points, so you have to like save them.
Yeah. Ancestor. And I can talk about this. Like, I'm going down the list that they got here, but I'm kind of giving some, clarification for what I've learned.
Yeah.
You have 5 points to spend on Ancestor. Now,
Yes.
if you take a standard Ancestry, it costs 5 points. But that means you could be like half elf, half gnome by just basically
Mixing.
switching out one of the elf ones for another one, or a custom one by mixing and matching and having 5 points. And there are some like negative things you can put to ancestries that would give you extra points and stuff too. So it's an interesting system that you can customize your things. You can take the standard templates, makes it feel like a little bit like I said when I was looking at it, like the Besom templates are, where it's just like it's a certain number of points and you get stuff. Except this is all just, it's everyone bases 5 points. Very interesting ancestry system. I like it. Pretty neat. You have mana and stamina points. Mana are for spellcasters. Martial people get stamina points. These are your special abilities.
So here's my first thing where I'm like, okay. Well, first off, the thing where stats kind of don't matter, it bothers me. Or attributes don't really matter, bothers me a bit. But then you've got this thing, which is I actually really like. This sounds kind of weird. The action point system, or the spell point system in 5e. 5e has a spell point system as an optional role, and it's really cool. But I find it weird because players don't like to use it because it's too like confusing to figure out. Granted, you have to have a lot of points to have the weird exponential things, but I like it in part because it means you can cast like 10 first level spells if that's all you want to cast. In 5e. So, and I think it's a fun idea.
I think it's the base idea that you have, like, if you're a martial character, you have your base weapon attacks. If you're a spellcaster, you have some base spells. And you can use these mana points for enhancements to, like, cast big things, or as a martial character, stamina points to do, like, special maneuvers. So, these are pools that you have, and you get them back by doing stuff of your class. Now, the only one I heard an example of is Barbarian. I'm a Barbarian. I want to get some stamina points back. How do I do that? I hit people or get hit. If you take, I think the brutal or like deadly hits, or get a critical, or have those back against you, you get stamina points back. And brutal is I think 5 over the DC, the deadly's 10 over, and critical is like rolling 20. So it's sort of like going into combat and doing barbarian things gives you the ability to do more barbarian things because you get the special attack maneuver points with stamina points back. So it's sort of like I go into battle, use my stamina points to hit things. Oh. Doing that can possibly give me my stamina points back to do more cool things. It's kind of like a momentum thing that the more you do what your class is built to do, the more you get it back. And each class has something like that they recharge stuff on, which is kind of cool.
That's kind of, that's cool. So I'm just kind of like, that's the thing is like, I think players will be fine with it, but I just find it weird that it's like, I mean, that's another thing too. Like, people don't want to have to like learn new things sometimes, which I think is more what happened with 5e, where it's like I tried to get players to be like, "Hey, this would be kind of cool. It gives you a lot more flexibility." And only one player was like, "That's cool," and I let him use it. And the other players were like, "No, I'll just keep it standard." I'm like, "Okay."
I think there's
like they don't want the complexity of like mixing it up.
There are some interesting ideas here, and I definitely.
Now, granted, they might make it simpler and stuff too. So.
Again, it feels like it's a relatively simple system, too. There are some, like, ideas that are a little bit more complex, certainly, but some of the basics of, like, it's just some numbers, like, your ability scores matter more for, like, the kind of skills and stuff, which, again, like, there is an entire skill system which does help and stuff, like, too. Like, Joe was talking to me about the skill system, I'm forgetting some of it, too, because, the difference between a 10-minute video and talking 30 minutes with Joe is 10-minute video, I could remember like 3 concepts. Joe, we went over like 20 concepts, so
like
the skills were very interesting because they did matter more. I feel like they were like a little bit more representative of something like when you had a bunch of skills in, let's say, like a World of Darkness or Shadow. Yeah, I don't think they technically have like the combat side of things, but they have a variety of skills which can have effects and stuff that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Skills matter, so that's where your stats might matter because of skills. Because it is a critical aspect of your character is using and having these skills.
And I looked at what they wrote here. It made it sound more like each class can use these different things, but they get some different benefits based on which attribute you use. So it still does affect things. I was just like, is it yeah, so that doesn't bother me as much because it's like, okay, in fighter they get like tactical things maybe or something like that, where it's like these abilities of a fighter are more beneficial if you have intelligence.
Yes,
but everyone can use anything.
Yeah, so if you're charismatic, maybe fighter abilities that help out your allies, you know. If you're intelligence, more for things like maneuvers and positioning. Like agility, you know, more for like maybe ranged attacks. Might for maybe more attacks for that fighter.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be like kind of maybe like a wizard, like a might wizard might be you're like doing a lot of like maybe physical enhancement magic to yourself and like getting into like the melee wizard, you know. We have melee wizard builds in a lot of other things. It's just that maybe the might wizard is all around that. I'm using like, you know, I'm using a sword too, but I'm like using buff magic to make myself actually do them. Like, you know,
it's basically like you'd basically be like an eldritch knight, but you'd be, you know, but you'd able to be cast with strength, so you don't have to split yourself a ton of different ways.
Yeah.
So that sounds a little bit better. I do find it funny, the skill challenge mechanisms. This is something that I do not understand why they did not include in 5e, is skill challenges. Because every person who does skill challenges and like uses it from 4e loves it. I don't know what it is, but everyone loves skill challenges.
Skill challenges have always been a fun kind of idea when they're used.
And people need to use them more because they're so much fun. And I don't know why players love it so much. Because I've never played an actual game where people do it. I think what I've heard someone try to explain is that it basically adds a lot of creativity where it's all like, okay, I'm not constrained to the like I can use fireball to cast it at the floor and then jump higher or something but I'm rolling an arcane check, you know, and that kind of makes people like, okay, they can be a lot more creative with what they do, which is why they like it. Social mechanisms I saw on their list, interesting. Depends on how they do it. Disposition, I mean, Pathfinder 2e has it. Also, any GM who wants to like do something should have some kind of thing like that in their head, of disposition. That's why I don't mind it being like a 5-tier disposition system is not bad. Like, this is something that players making it a rule though is helpful for players, because there's often this thing where players don't know what's happening. Like, I as a GM can be like, okay, you made a persuasion check. He now doesn't hate you, but he's still not going to help you. And then but players kind of think, oh, I made my persuasion check, that means he's on our side now, which is not how it works. You can increase their disposition through checks. You can't necessarily switch them to a complete opposite side through a check. So having a rule for that, rather than just the GM having like their mental attitude towards it, is interesting.
And here's some other just things like the 4 stats, like might goes to hit points, very much like Constitution. Agility goes to your physical defense, and then both charisma, intelligence both go to your mystical defense. So you get something for all of them.
Yeah. So they have a mystical defense. Okay.
Yeah.
So like,
there's a link to some sample rules and character sheets. So I opened up a little lower down if you want to check it out. But anyway, kind of talking about this is a good evolution of the fantasy system. I feel like yes. Is it more a direct evolution of 5e or its own thing? Is it like kind of like, you know, Pathfinder first, second edition is both an evolution but kind of its own thing? You know, there's some questions there. You know, would I call this it's its own thing?
Here's the main
like
reason.
A 6th edition?
Do you want to know what I find funny? The main reason I would call this an evolution of 5e is because I mentioned the game my friend's making. He started with 5e. He just started with like some edits to 5e, and then he kept just going from there. He actually has a lot of these kinds of things. He has a magic point system. He has a stamina system. He has like 4 attributes. He has, it's funny how many things here are in his thing, and his was basically just an evolution of 5e as how it started out. So it's kind of funny that you kind of get a lot of this if you try and make 5e better.
Yeah. No. It's interesting. I definitely would say check it out if you want to feel that. Like, but the thing is, yeah, it's when someone telling me that like they feel like this is more 6th edition than anything they've put out so far, because I don't even know with this update to D&D we're going to get a 6th edition anytime soon.
No,
and,
we're not.
I worry that the update won't take things far enough that it will fix a lot of the problems of 5. I think that's what my biggest worry has been. Not that we would define it as a 5.5, not anything like that, but there are some issues with 5e that have been around since the beginning that we can live with most of the time, especially in like small campaigns or one-shots where 5e is the ruler. But for those of us that play like longer campaigns or adventures and we start feeling those issues, we would like that fixed,
Now, okay, I will say, I know that the devs have been focusing a lot on making the back end better. Back end of like 12 plus, level 12 plus. Because I know that's been a big complaint of most people. So I know they're at least going to try and do something about that. They're also trying to make every level more meaningful to the classes, which I like. I actually think the 5e update is going to be good. I think your point of, is it really worth like $180? I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing is they're selling it as this whole new thing. It's going to be this whole thing. And then they're trying to like make it like backwards compatible, which is only going to create the kind of bloat that Pathfinder 1E had, where it's like they kept adding new things and everything just kind of started to feel off.
I think it's the thing that I unfortunately both say and don't say correctly is I am not against them being backwards compatible necessarily. I just think that my entire opinion is like, and there's something like mixing and matching isn't necessarily bad, and some of the things they talked about in their playtests are backward compatible. And if this would say like, oh, this build is what you use, that's something from the old. It's just that with a lot of the changes, edits, fixes, certain classes were worse than others. Cough, cough, monk. So
cough, cough, original ranger.
Yeah. Playing the old one versus a bunch of other people playing the newer classes means you're automatically at a disadvantage, and that's the kind of thing that I'm like, that might mean mechanically, not whatever you do as the DM, mechanically, it could make it a worse time for someone. Which can happen. You can have mechanical things where, like, hey, Pathfinder builds. You can play a shitty Pathfinder build, and it can ruin your time, regardless of the game and people you're playing with.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing. That's the problem, too, because people can...
I worry about it. It might not
come with an idea, and they won't be able to make it work. I don't think it'll be as big of a problem as the cross-compatibility unintentional breaking. New barbarian with old barbarian subclass, or new wizard with old wizard spells. Maybe something was taken off the list and added, but then they go and use it because it's in the old list, or
backwards compatibility is not necessary. I think that's where I like the remaster for Pathfinder 2e better, because they're just like, hey, use the new stuff when you can.
Yeah.
Sort of like, if you can't use the new stuff, you're allowed to use the old stuff still, but if you can, just use the new stuff. It's like,
basically...
I think 5e, Wizards just saying that. It's like, hey, you can still use the stuff, it's still compatible with that, but you really prefer to use the new one. Just saying that would put my mind at more ease.
What they're doing is basically they're because that's the thing is it sets up I agree, because it sets up an expectation for players that they can do what they want, whereas game masters are going to be the one have to controlling. Whereas if they say, hey, you can do what you want, but this is how we're going to approach it, where the new stuff is going to be more important, then GMs can be like, no, see, the official thing said that's more important. But when they like go, oh no, but otherwise you get players going, but they officially said it's backwards compatible, so I should be allowed to do this. You get that. It's annoying to deal with as a GM, but you get that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if like the official stance is one thing, but then the actual practice is that's one thing. But if the stance is the other way, so it's kind of just this thing where it's like, it reminds me of this whole problem where often considered the like there's this whole problem that people consider in programming. I don't know why I'm using something slightly more complicated, but people might know about this. So of multi-threading. Multi-threading is a notoriously annoying thing to deal with as a programmer. And something that like one of my professors basically said is, yeah, for some reason, multi-threading is something that the programmer of an application has to handle. Whereas what they could have done is they could have made it so the people who make the operating system handle multi-threading for you. By the way, multi-threading is basically where a single process is used by two separate threads of a processor. That's why it's multi-threading.
Ooh, yeah.
To make things go faster. But it's up for the person making a program. So like if you make a video game, you have to build it for multi-threading or not. You can't, so you have to program it for multi-threading. But what my professor was like, yeah, what they should have done is people figured out how to do it at the programming level or at the operating system level. So the operating system can multi-thread things that are multi-threadable. So that way programmers don't have to do this because it's a headache. It's also like very hard to do, and it can be very problematic if you don't do it right and create a lot of memory leaks and stuff. It's like not great. And that's kind of what I feel like with 5e is that like they're basically making the decision of whether or not to what rules to include up to the GM, which makes their job harder. What to include, what to allow.
And I think we're kind of at that point in time is for at least 5e. I feel like we have to see what they do, and we can make the final decision then at that point in time. Once we kind of like break it down, analyze it, look at it, and that's the unfortunate thing I feel like that we really have to do with this, because they've put themselves in a position where I think it's not a good position to be in, because they wanted to appease everybody. They put themselves in an area where they're like they want to try to please everybody, but they also want to fix things and make something new, and I don't know, but not
so what? Yeah. The problem is people, they got a lot of like, I feel like they got a lot of pushback against, so we have to buy a whole set of new books, and they're like, well, no, you can use the old stuff. Like that's basically why. It's like they're basically saying you don't have to buy the new, you have to buy the new stuff, but you don't have to buy the new stuff. Is really what they're doing. It's like this kind of thing where it's like they're making it, and by saying that you can use the old stuff, when in reality what they're doing is making it so you can't, like, they're doing it to basically not sound like they're throwing everything out. It's like, even though that's basically what they're going to be doing.
Yes.
And they're just making it sound like you don't have to, but if you want to be up to date, buy our books, but you don't have to. We're not forcing you to buy things. We're not changing everything. Don't worry.
But FOMO, and certainly speaking, again, if the thing is,
yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get them.
If I see if I'm sitting here and I have the old book and I'm making a character and it's fine, and then I see like my friend who has the new monk and is playing a new monk, and I was thinking about playing a monk in a game, and it's like so much better than the monk I have, I'd be like, holy shit, god damn it, like, I've got the shitty monk that I can play. I was just thinking of doing it to have, like, fun, because I had this idea for a character concept. But, man, I could have all these cool abilities and actually, like, do stuff rather than just play this for fun. I could actually be a functional character. Wow.
Yeah.
The FOMO. They say that's the term, FOMO. And
fear of missing out.
Yeah.
That's what FOMO stands for.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're just throwing it out there, and it's there.
Yeah, so I just don't know, like, part of me would rather than just be like, it's a new edition, you can either play the old one or the new one. Like, I feel like that, but, see, and that's the thing, and I'd totally be fine with, like, in fact, that's kind of what they did with 3.5, where it's like, it's a new version, it's kind of compatible, but this will fix a lot of stuff, right?
Yes. The 3.5 is very much actually handled a lot like, I gotta be honest, the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Revised. Pathfinder 2nd Edition Revised is really like 2.5. You know?
Yes.
It really is. It's a really update change. If I really want to talk about it, it really is.
Yeah, I'd honestly say, though, the one thing about Pathfinder 2E Revised is they didn't change nearly enough for it to feel like a new system, which is the only reason I would say go against calling it a 0.5.
I think that's the real reason I also haven't done it, because mechanically, core-wise, there really hasn't been a lot of updates revised. It's mainly like a lot of terms, a lot of stuff they've got to remove, a lot of things they have to change around, you know, and navigating that has been a challenge. As someone that talks about the lore and navigating monster lore, that's a thing, you know. It's sort of like, this exists, but this doesn't exist. Like, this general term still exists, and this is different now.
I agree.
Like,
it's gonna be a
Second Darkness doesn't even exist anymore. It was something else entirely, and people got high and thought it was just the Dusk Elves they ran into, like the Cavern Elves. There are no drows out there. You know, the entire adventure path is technically retconned, but also sort of there. It was something else that people got high and, like, you know, they thought they saw. It was illusions, evil magic, you know.
Okay.
That's one of the shit they did to, like, because they got rid of Drow completely. They still have a dark elf that lives in the down there in the underground, but it's not the same thing, and they walk very far away from it because that was a very D&D thing, and they've done that with a lot of their places. In some places they already were walking. Anyway. And again, this comes back to a greater conversation that I kind of wanted to have, because we are reaching this. This is a thing going on. We have no real evolution to D&D after 10 years, except a sort of evolution, which they don't want to be a 0.5, but it really kind of is a 0.5, but also isn't a 0.5. So what is this? And why do we have to spend so much money on it? Why does it make it worth it to spend so much money on it for your average person? For we who are in the industry and we talk about it and review it and you know, come to you with stuff, yeah, we might have to purchase it or something like that, or at least one of the books. But what does it mean for you out there in purchasing it? You know, and why should you? And I don't think they've put on that kind of, like, display of why as well as they should.
Yeah, they just are hedging so much, and it's just so weird.
It's corporate. I'm sure corporate is the one that wants to hedge their bets, because they want to continue to make it a thing for everybody. You know, that's what they want to do, because it is very popular. And they can do things like TV series and movies and video games and stuff like that, and get out there and get more people into the game. And so they're very nervous about fucking with that.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, the biggest thing, is they're nervous about calling it something new because they don't want to scare off people. It's literally just like, you don't want to learn 5.5, is that different than 5e? Oh, I'm not sure I want to learn that. Let's just stay with 5.
Yeah. Especially for
like,
a lot of the newer, more casual people. That's a scary thing. And I understand that. And it's a business thing, but also it doesn't display stuff very well. And again, as I said,
it creates more confusion on the other end, which honestly I think will turn away more players in the long run.
Yes, confusion turns away players in the long end. They can just say what I said about the Pathfinder remaster, where they're like, you can still use the old stuff, but we recommend doing the new stuff. It's a revised edition. They could have just called it D&D 5th edition revised. And they could just say the exact same thing that Paizo fucking said, and you know what? It would have cleared up so much stuff with this, the way that they present this. And, you know, I think that's the thing is, I think it's going to have some good changes, some stuff like that, some updates, and certainly speaking, I hope it's enough to at least, well, again, DMG, where it feels like it's probably going to be the only book that I can say off the top of my head, definitely worth it. Monster?
I'm
maybe.
I'm hoping Monster Manual is worth it, because I think it will be, because I'm hoping a lot of the later end monsters are better.
that's the one I'm kind of really worried about, because, like...
Player you'll want, because you'll want to have it for your players who will, like, be like, oh, I want to play this one. It's like, take a look at this one, it's better.
Again, I think that's the FOMO part of it, where it's like, how much better will it be? And how much, like, new actual stuff will we have in the player's hand? That's my question in the end. Because, again, the flip-flopping and a lot of just use the old stuff that kept showing up in a lot of their playtests.
Yeah, no,
that's what makes me worry about that.
No, I agree that the player core is going to have problems, because it's going to be a lot of the same. So, like, spells are basically going to be the same, just clarified. I mean, there are a lot of things that apparently, like, sleep was super confusing for people. Like, I never saw it as confusing, but apparently it confused a lot of people, where it's like, no, it's current hit points. People didn't understand that. It's current hit points. They didn't understand how it, like, affected people. They didn't understand, like, that it could affect allies or not. It was very confusing to a lot of people, because it wasn't very clear.
It's just someone outside of it that doesn't work with that. I can see that.
Like,
but it's also
when I read current hit points, I know what that means. But when like a person who's not used to it sees current hit points, they might think, okay, that's their hit points, their maximum, right? It's like I mean, I get it, but yeah, they said it's super confusing. Thunder Wave is worded very poorly. Apparently, a lot of people think that it's out from you in all directions rather than out forward.
I can see that, like, for me, for like the way that I understand stuff, and because again, we have experience that might help us in, like, being like, oh, that's how that works, rather than oh, how is that supposed to work? So I can understand someone that knows less being like more confused.
Yeah, and where this really comes from is a lot of the wording of, like, the wording in Thunderwave is confusing, but it says what type of it says it's a blast or something, which if you look in the thing, this is what a blast is. Okay, so that's why it's this way, because this is what they define as a blast, and it's an area of a blast, but the wording itself is confusing. But people who don't play RPGs don't know to, like, the rules compare, like, you always need to reference the rules that are referenced by the spell, like, that's not clear to everyone. So I know, like, those kind of rule clarifications are going to be great for new players who can find the new spells, because they're not going to be too confused by what, oh wait, but this is sleep, oh wait, but this is also sleep, which one do I use?
But before we continue on, because I do want to bring in some other games, I do want to finish out the DC-20, because I was including that in here. Go check out the Kickstarter. I linked it if you're interested in this. It does seem, at very least, like it's a very good entry into the fantasy RPG things, and into the 5e adjacent RPGs. So this one might be if you're looking for a 6th edition, this might be it for you, or something like that, that it might be. Okay.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people putting out games, 5th edition adjacent, now. Yeah. So this is just another one, but it does look like a very interesting one. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I do want to say.
Okay, go ahead. You go ahead first, because I do have two directions I want to take with this discussion we've been having.
I want to talk about. Yeah. I want to also kind of take in a direction. So we'll basically compare directions and see which way we'll take it. I was thinking of trying directions for editions for things other than 5e and Pathfinder and related.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, same. I wanted to go there too. So.
Okay. I want to start with one that I know has had a very interesting evolution and has had 6 editions, Shadowrun.
Oh, I thought I'm like, 6? I thought it was 5. I thought you were going to go World of Darkness.
Oh, I'm thinking about going World of Darkness after here, which kind of has 5, but 6 Shadowrun I wanted to start out with, because I'm going to tell you, the initial Shadowrun until 3rd edition had some weird ways they went about dice. And it was actually just better the way they kind of changed things. So it used to be, you only had to get 1 success to succeed at anything. But sometimes the DCs were higher than what an E6 could provide. Oh, how'd you get those? Dices were exploding. If you rolled a 6, you rolled it again and got another number higher. So if you wanted to get like an 18, you'd have to roll 6 3 times in a row. So it still mattered that you had a lot of dice, because it gave you more and more chances to get sixes, and on those dice to get more sixes, etc., etc., etc. But you really only had to get one. It was an interesting system, but they switched it over in 3rd edition to you start rolling all those dice, now you're trying to get a certain target numbers for stuff. Guess what? That was better! Turns out, it's very difficult to get those high numbers, and sometimes nearly impossible. If I'm shooting a guy, and I'm trying to trade a 12, and I have like 5 d6s, my chances of getting at 12 are very low. Where it could be that, a number of successes, it's not going to be that high of a number, but the amount of successes might make a difference then. So it was a very similar in the ways they went to the systems, but in 3rd edition they went a different direction. Okay, that's the first big change. Through the editions, 4th and 5th edition, they refined things, they made things easier, they simplified a lot of systems to be similar to each other. Like, I'm going to tell you, real-world combat is very similar to Matrix combat, which is very similar to magical astral combat. On the surface look very different, but mechanically speaking, all 3 of them function exactly the same way when it comes down to it. Same kind of dice rolls, same kind of things over, so you can roll all of them parallel and still be able to play perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we get to 6th edition. 6th edition, they wanted to basically make 5e, and so they simplified the system, but it's the difference between all the original D&Ds and Shadowruns is night and day. Not because of just their completely different systems, and Shadowrun's a D6 system. Shadowrun is a very crunchy, different kind of system, even up to 5th edition. It's a very different kind of number system, and the 5e simplification that they did was too much. I don't like it. I'm sure, and I've heard people complain about 6th edition because it is bad. It's simplified in the wrong way. So that's why, if you played 6th edition Shadowrun and didn't like it, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad overall. It's still playable, still works. It just has a lot of issues brought about by the simplification, especially when it comes to a lot of their more deeper systems that they kind of don't work as well anymore, and a lot of the ways they do things, it kind of makes problems being that simple. That's why, whenever someone would ask me, I'd recommend 4th or 5th edition. Basically, character creation is a little different, and the way that some of the numbers work for skills and stuff like that, 5th edition would be a little better with one, but I like both. Okay, cool. But that's a good example of simplification being too much, too bad. It's kind of similar to when we talk about, when they went from 3.5 to 4th edition D&D. It's the same cover, different meat inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe not the same thing. It's maybe same cover, some of the same pages, but you open the book and you're like, hey, this book is missing 2/3 of its pages. That kind of thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an example I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit there, as a good example of goods and bads in system changes.
Yeah. I don't know enough about Shadowrun to really comment too much. I can go into one, and then we'll probably both be able to talk about World of Darkness. But I'll go into one, which is I actually like. So what? Traveler. Traveler has had
a lot of editions.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 editions.
Now, preference. It has changed a lot of editions also because it does keep going to different companies too that are publishing.
Yes.
Didn't they have 3 or 4 different companies?
So here's the thing. So it started out with Games Workshop. And yeah, so the issue I think is more when the license became a little bit more open. It's not a completely open license, but it's they shared the license with companies, which is where it gets kind of a little weird. Where it started off with Classic Traveler. I don't know much about it. Then you got Mega Traveler, which I've looked at some of those rules. They're kind of neat. Then you've got Traveler, the New Era. I haven't seen anything of that. I just looked up all the editions. Mark Miller's Travel. That one I know a lot more about. That one is very complex. That's very much the weird kind of nitty gritty attention, everything. Okay, like everything has like stats and stuff. It's really weird.
Wasn't Mark Miller involved with the original Traveler, though? That's why he kind of
He
did
was.
the version of
He
it?
was.
So it's sort of like...
he left Games Workshop and then like made his own, basically.
Yeah, so it's sort of like he came in and was like, I can do it better than people have been doing it. This is my the maximum. I guess it would be like, if we talk about D&D, it'd be like somewhere during the early days of D&D, like Gary Gygax took a step away. I can never remember any of the other people that were involved in the original creation of D&D, but it was more than just Gary Gygax. It was a bunch of different people. It was like 3 or 4 different main people, and Gary Gygax is just making his own version of it completely on his own, separate from everybody.
Yeah.
Which they did kind of do a little bit of that kind of thing, though. But that's what second edition, the original AD&D was.
Then Steve Jackson Games got a hold of it and did Traveler, and then did GURPS Traveler. So they basically just did their own thing, but then like adapted the GURPS setting, or the Traveler setting with their own rules and their own like little additions and stuff. Then you've got Traveler 20. I actually don't know much about that. This is where the it kind of starts to bounce around a lot. GURPS Traveler 2. They have GURPS Traveler, Interstellar Wars, Traveler Hero. So these 3 I haven't actually seen anything. Then Mongoose gets a hold of it. And this is where things stabilize a bit, because now you've got 2 companies who work with it. Mongoose and Far Future Enterprises. Far Future Enterprises is, I think, where Mark Miller ended up making his own thing or something like that, something like that. Because I think what happens is, like, there's a license and then Mark Miller also owns it or something like that, so where he is, he can also work on it, but then other people can own it too. I don't know. I need to look more into it.
It's probably just because of the original way it was dealt. There was multiple owners of it. There wasn't one particular owner of it, and which can happen.
Yeah. And I think Mongoose did a great job fixing a lot of the weirdness. However, the weirdness may not have... A lot of people missed the weirdness. So Mark Miller with Far Future Enterprises made Traveler 5. And then Mongoose made their second edition. Now there's an update to Traveler 5 as well. And then Mongoose is now done doing their Traveler second edition update. So it's like they're updating it. Which... Yeah, it's basically just rules clarifications. It's very much... So yeah, that one's a fun one. I think it's interesting because you've got the really weird... And this thing, I've read some of Traveler 4, but I mostly read Traveler 5 and Mongoose. Traveler 5, which is also Mark Miller, is like, literally, your weapons have, like, 4 stats. That are like quality, grade, malfunction, whatever. It's like... And it's like you roll these things all the time. I'm like... Who would play this? It's so number crunchy. You have to like know stats for everything. It's interesting though. And Mongoose Second Edition is just great for like the more modern system where it's a lot more streamlined. But I do like that they include a lot of extra rules, so you can like actually kind of tailor it. If you want to get really tactical, you can, which is where I'm pretty sure like Classic Traveler is very wargamey. If I remember correctly. I'd like to look more into some of the other stuff. I kind of like some of Mega Traveler from what I've seen. It's where some of the real interesting planet generation stuff originated. Yeah. So their journey is interesting. I don't know much to say beyond like how it happened or why it happened and some bits and pieces as I've read through some of the books. But yeah, I kind of
there probably is a very interesting story there of like different people getting it, which have caused so many different editions, and that on that side, it's really hard to unpack, mechanically wise. Kind of, you just have to recommend to people, hey, there's like 2 things that are kind of the most modern. Check those 2 out. Like check out the Mike Miller thing or the Mongoose one. Those are probably your 2 directions of the most modern versions to check out, which might be the best. Honestly, you've run a few things with the Modern Traveler, and I've looked at some of the books of it. The Modern Traveler, the one that Mongoose does, looks pretty good. Yeah. Works pretty well.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it works fine. And again, like the Traveler 5, it's like if you want to get into how to build a race in the Traveler system and do the thing, and that's why it's like they have so many different stats and stuff, and it's like you can have alternate stats and like how those work, and it's really interesting for like creature generation and stuff. I love Mongoose 5 for that because they've got like a lot of interesting things there of like how to really be nitty gritty with it. But beyond a GM perspective, I think it'd be a nightmare as a player. because it's just you'd have to have like a stat for every piece of equipment. Like, literally, like
Jeez,
every
yeah.
piece of equipment has a stat, has a set of stats. It's like you need to be in a group of players who are all really into number crunching and all really nerdy to play T5.
And I think that, it's the thing that I think the entire reason I wanted to revisit this, because we've talked about editions of things before, but I wanted to revisit this during this time period because this comes up here, and these are very good examples, is that editions, new or old, it kind of comes down to you have to look at all of them and understand what it's like. Right now, if we would take like a side view, before we continue on talking about these things, kind of give some examples. If we take a look at a D&D, I gotta be honest, I probably wouldn't recommend anybody play anything from before 4th edition. If you want to have like a serious long-term, if you want to just try it out, I'd say go ahead and knock yourself out. Or
D&D,
if you want
said?
D&D, like anything before 4th edition. If you want to do something that's a little bit more brutal or deadly, I might recommend 3.5. I gotta be honest. 3.5 over 3.1 because it's a big improvement. But like AD&D,
although
second edition
the thing is, like,
first edition.
if you're gonna suggest 3.5, I personally would still rather, say go Pathfinder.
Pathfinder was like 3.75. Yes, I agree on that one. If I want to recommend 3rd edition at all, I just basically say like Pathfinder first edition.
Because for as much as I dislike Pathfinder, there's a lot to love with it. Like I don't like it, but I can see why a lot of people still play it.
They fixed so much of the 3.5. And the thing is, yes, there are some big issues that still that exist with first edition Pathfinder that aren't going to go away because the system's basically not really being supported by things that do that, and it's baked into the actual edition. It is just the unfortunate parts about long-term games. But like 2nd edition AD&D and anything before that, there's goods and bads about it, and it's not a bad thing if you like a system like that. But it's incredibly crunchy, incredibly deadly. It's got a lot of issues with it. It's got a lot of balancing problems. We're talking about the days when classes leveled up at different amounts of experience. And they were balanced around that. I'm gonna tell you, rogues fucking suck in AD&D and earlier. 2nd edition AD&D and earlier. And you know why? Because they did? And because they leveled up like there was no tomorrow, and so by the time you get like a 5th level rogue, then you're like wizards like 3rd level, and they're equal-ish power. Your rogue just got all those levels on them, or like 6th level rogue to your 3rd level wizard. It was balanced around that. Rogues did jack diddly. They were awful, and there's even more stuff like that. Like so much saver suck that exists.
That's
so much.
That's funny because I heard someone talking about, I think, AD&D, and when they introduced the rogue or something like that, they're like, it was like, man, this is actually kind of great.
It was the thief originally. When they got to, it was 3rd edition that really made them good. I'm going to tell you that thing. That's when they were no longer the thief. I'm sorry. AD&D 2nd edition did do some stuff to improve things. I'm going to tell you that. It was an improvement over the earlier editions to a degree. It still had some issues. I think at that point in time, the rogue characters actually had some abilities, and I think the thing is they're thinking about, if I compare it, how it grows throughout the campaign. Because again, you level up at much higher, quicker rate, so you will feel more powerful that way. But like mechanically, when you break it down, it's kind of terrible. You need those extra levels.
So because basically what I say, like, I remember, again, this is all secondhand because like I've only watched videos. I've never played AD&D, but they're like, oh yeah, no, the rogue was nice as an addition because I don't think it started out with the rogue. I think they added it in later, so it wasn't one of the core classes.
It was an evolution of the thief.
Okay, so they added in the rogue after the thief. Okay,
basically it replaced it. Is what it did.
Okay. Yeah, okay, and that's what I think that's what they liked so much about it, is it was like so much better because it replaced it, It's
again,
like, it was
but
like,
people think of like that, and it's the thief, and the thief just it's like the if you're talking about 5th edition, it's just like the burglar version of a thief, or the Is it just called Thief, the type of rogue archetype?
Yes, I think the rogue archetype is thief.
Yeah, it's just that. Except also you didn't get sneak attack. You got backstab. Meaning you have to get behind someone to stab them.
Yeah.
Which meant direction mattered.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. I mean, up through 3.5 direction mattered.
Direction mattered in 3.5, but at least then you get the sneak attack at that point in time in 3.0
Yeah.
3.5. And again, like, 4th edition, I honestly would recommend it now. It's a very different system. It's not really like traditional D&D that's normal way. It's its own kind of fantasy system. It's very fun. It's very tactical. With modern having VTTs, great. Recommend.
Yep.
5th edition, still recommend that. You know, it's great for if you just want to pick up a game and play. But, like, yeah. The same thing could be said for, like if we look at Shadowrun. Could I recommend the older editions? I wouldn't recommend anything beyond older than 3rd edition. 3rd edition, I would say if you want something that's a little different, but has, like, crunchier magic system, maybe that. But really, I'd recommend 4th and 5th edition. And they're very close to each other. I wouldn't recommend 6th edition because I think they simplified it too much. If you want something very simple, or something small, you know what? No, I could say it's not a bad place to get introduced to the world. Not necessarily. Yeah. But, like, for a campaign, for an adventure with a bunch of people, and you're not testing things out, you know, I would definitely recommend 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
I would not recommend going back to 1st or 2nd edition at all.
Yeah. And actually, I saw a whole thing where it's like, I think this was a Matthew Koval video I saw where he basically is like, yeah, no, I mean, new players actually get kind of confused with 5th edition because there's a lot from 5th edition that was taken from older editions that you don't think about, but it is actually very confusing. For example, the attribute system is actually very confusing because you really only use the attribute to get the modifiers. And then people get very confused about that. Like, why are we like, how do you determine the modifiers? Why are we only using the modifiers?
Here's the thing: it was worse in AD&D. You didn't have modifiers.
I believe it.
You just had you had the stats, and you had to kind of figure out what numbers you got from those stats by looking up on charts. Well, I have a strength of 18. What the hell does that mean? Okay, go find a chart and find out what that means for my character. That kind of shit. Yeah. When 3rd edition they introduced the modifier, they're like, oh, we just have this crunchy number related to it. And yes, I think that's why, like, DC 20 is a much better evolution, or what they're doing in the new core for Pathfinder, where they're like, hey, you have the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got rid of the problem.
Yep. Should we go to our weekend gaming? Because we are pretty long right now.
Oh, we are pretty long. I'll just do a quick thing for World of Darkness then. World of Darkness is a very complex thing. Between 1st edition, the revised editions, the 20th anniversary editions, and then the 5th edition, if we use Vampire in particular, because there sort of is a 5 editions in there, there really isn't. I'm going to tell you here, like, there was like 4 editions, technically. But 5th edition sounds a lot like D&D, and that's why they wanted to go for it. And technically speaking, they can kind of say that it was there, because it was, basically they took, like, they had the original edition, a revised, and then they had, like, a revised of the revised in there.
Yeah.
So
what
basically,
I find funny,
they basically took a 0.5 and made it an edition. Think of it that way.
What I find funny is that Traveler 5 is called Traveler 5 because it's an expansion on Traveler 4, which was the actual 4th edition, but Traveler 5 is like the 10th edition.
But yes, if you want to get actual serious about it, V5 isn't the 5th edition technically. By the way, that they presented it originally, they've rewritten history. And mechanically speaking, I really feel like those first 3 editions of World of Darkness didn't really change a lot. They're very similar to each other. Because guess what? One of them was revised, and one of them was revised. They only did that with Vampire, and like Werewolf was only like...
They
was
did
actually
technically
only 4?
have 4. You did technically have 4, because you had the original, then you had like the revised, and
yeah,
the
it could be
revised.
considered
Then you
like
had like the
second edition.
offshoots. And then you had the offshoots from Onyx Path. So they kind of had 5 if you go through all of those.
Yeah, then you got the revised then went to the 20th anniversary, which is actually an edition, And then the Chronicles were their own offshoots, which became their own thing, because the Chronicles of Darkness still is its own thing, technically. And I think Onyx Path is one of the few people that still give stuff for that, because White Wolf likes to forget their mistakes that they keep making, but you should remember them, because people didn't initially like a lot of Chronicles, but when they split them apart, guess what? Chronicles found its fan, Old World of Darkness found its fan. But when you forced everybody basically into... Chronicles supposed to be a new edition, basically. But
I like Chronicles.
But basically, they did that by burning down their entire old world to create it and make something completely new and different. And honestly speaking, I
That's
feel
where
like
it
for
lost
me,
a lot of people.
yeah, for me, I'm going to say this about here. I hate Chronicles Vampire version. I like some of the Chronicles other versions because I feel like they take different directions with a similar story. The Vampire
I actually agree. Vampire is actually the worst plot line out of all of them. I will agree with that for all the Chronicles.
The other the Chronicles of Darkness ones, honestly speaking, Vampires the big one. That's why it got a lot of clout and caused the most damage. Other ones, mixed bag, but I think they all have interesting ideas. Regardless, V5, great ideas story-wise, some interesting ideas mechanic-wise, other ideas which I feel are awful direction for the entire franchise. But it's the 5th edition. That's what makes me, because I don't think it's out yet, I worry about the 5th edition of Werewolf, which really isn't the 5th edition, because they really only had 4 editions. Guess what? Werewolf didn't have that revised thing in there. They literally only had 4, but you're still calling it 5th edition because, yes, at least with Vampire, you could argue for 5 of them.
Yeah, 5 or 6. That's the thing. Is you could argue for
if you drew Chronicles back in there, yeah, you could. But Worm back is it. Let Worm come back. But yeah, no. I worry for Werewolf 5th edition. I hope they learn some lessons from Vampire 5th edition and fix a bit of their stuff in there. We'll see. We just gotta see. But it's the kind of thing about all the editions of World of Darkness were very similar to each other. The 20th anniversary stuff was just fixing up, kind of modifying, kind of not simplifying, but refining the processes that we had before. Hello, you're back.
Yep.
But I'm saying the 20th anniversaries were refinements of the earlier editions.
I actually hear. So here's the thing: when I cut out, I can still hear you.
That's weird.
It's my upload that dies, not my download.
Yeah. So
it's weird. I figured that out a while back, and it's I don't know why.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that they did that, but I feel like at least so far, 5th edition of World of Darkness stuff, vast differences that I feel like are. Here's the thing. I've read up on it, didn't like it, and I think that's the thing is, I talked to Momo who played it, and they just disliked it completely because it detracted from a lot of the stories and stuff like that. And I think that's the thing is, a lot of the core aspects that were Vampire are kind of wrecked in some ways by the ideas of some of the things they did in the story, and then by the frenzy system. Because they made
the frenzy system I heard is the worst part.
It's too integral to the system, I think. It wasn't a bad thing to improve the frenzy system. I can agree on that. But they made it integral to using any kind of blood ability, which I think was not a great idea. I think it could have been a better idea of maybe when you're at a certain percentage of your blood pool, you start hitting that. Where you're getting low on blood, you start. So it's I'm really full on blood. I can use a bunch of powers, but so I only have 10. Well, I'm down to 5. Now I have to start worrying about using powers. I have to be careful that I have to manage my resource where I'm able to do it very quickly. Ooh, that would have been a cool idea. Where you get that thread of frenzy when you push yourself too far. Because normally it was originally only at when you went to 0 or 1 or something like that. You really had to worry about in the original system. I wouldn't have mind if you expanded it about a bit. Then it adds that idea of if you don't want to, you can still use some abilities and stuff, and some powers that don't rely on blood, but certain more powerful abilities that rely on blood, when you start using them, you have to worry about it. Again, these are just my complaints about it. They could have done better. But anyway, let's talk about our week in gaming. We kind of give some examples of how, additions can be good or bad. We talk about that a little bit, and we're hitting that kind of, stride here with the weirdness around D&D, and that's why I wanted to kind of bring back this topic. we're having Joe's game this Sunday, so we didn't do anything last Sunday. I think I had stuff on Monday and Tuesday. So I can talk about my Monday game, and then I'll let you kind of maybe handle Wednesday a little bit here, since you were, I'm the runner, but you were a player, and you can comment on that.
Yeah.
So Monday was finishing up the basically chess tournament that I caused. So
yeah.
It would have been a thing none of us were involved in, but I kind of made it that our players were involved in it because someone's king was very evil, and I kind of got pissed off they were being a bitch. So I basically was like, "Oh yeah, well they'll beat you in the tournament. Then you can give them funding to make their place better that you've been insulting the entire time here. You know, send them some money." But yeah, it's been going well because we ended up figuring out that he was cheating because he was an evil king anyway. So we switched things that he gets to face like all like the really difficult people he convinced to join this tournament because it's technically a school tournament, but it was open to the public. So he basically like paid money for like a lot of top end players to go in there. It's basically like, you know, we're having a chess tournament at a local college, and then like the world champions show up, you know, that kind of thing. You don't expect that. It kind of ruins things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lot of that there, and then we just had fights in Momo's game on Tuesday. It pretty much were at the end of the game. We had to defeat these 3 beings. We did. One of them was a little creative in the way we defeated it. One of them, we had an item we used to weaken them, and so they were difficult fights, but we managed to beat them, and now we are ready for the final battle, which, having defeated these basically guardians of the entrance to this plane, a dark incarnation of the plane has been summoned, and now we must fight basically the world that we're on itself in this Demiplane. So yeah! Woo! We're gonna be doing that.
So Wednesday?
Wednesday. Yes.
Yeah, so we talked with a demigod or some kind of minor deity of some kind. I was kind of unclear about that. If she was like half mortal or just a demigod.
I'd probably consider a demigod.
Yeah, okay. Based on, like, you said it was like she was created by a god rather than like someone else who's like...
Okay, so what you didn't find out is that basically there had been an interaction between Desna and another goddess. That was basically Desna, a very powerful magical interaction between them in something that happened between the two of them. And by chance, part of that essence of the magical ability happened to create a being that was combined of their 2 powers. So it's kind of like them creating a magical celestial daughter accidentally between the 2 of them.
Got it. So she is very much a demigod. Okay.
Yes.
Rather than like a true god.
Yes. Yeah, but she also doesn't really live up to her demigod title, which a lot of other demigods actually do. She basically shirks her duties. So she doesn't consider herself a demigod.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we talked to her, found out she was on probation, or sorry, in prison, basically, or on timeout. Is probably the best way to consider it.
It's like they created a very nice, like perfect, very like idyllic Demiplane for her to be in prison in. So it's not like it's a prison, but it's sort of like here's a.
That's why.
You're at home prison. It's like you're arrested at home, you know, kind of thing.
Home arrest. Yeah,
she got home arrested for like crimes against mortals.
That's also why I called it a timeout.
it kind of was.
Anyway, we freed her. She's now loose on the mortal plane, but she's going to help us get into this weird place. We also had a few people talk to their dead relatives in part of the ritual to get us the ability to enter this place without problems, something like that.
Yeah.
Ada is weaker. Apparently that'll be solved very soon, but yeah, she's apparently doesn't have all her powers anymore.
I will have that. I'll probably just have that discussion with the person you're going to be talking to, and they're going to be like,
I know.
You know, it was always within you kind of discussion, you know.
Yeah, no, I know, and I know, and I just wanted to do that for character development purposes. So
Yeah, no,
that's
it's
why I
a
brought
good
that up
character
to you.
development to feel like you're weakened then, and like to see this person that raised you and help you like get that back in that kind of direction. Joe talked to his brother and kind of got kind of discussions there.
Oh yeah, Vona
Where-
talked to her daddy.
Vona talked to her daddy. So Vona is kind of going to dive into kind of vampire-y stuff, but also talk to her dead husband a little bit. Joe is going to have to embrace like elemental powers or something like that. That's the entire discussion is like, you'll have the option of maybe like becoming less mortal or something. You could like maybe embrace the elemental blood deep within you a little bit more than you are, kind of thing. So we'll see about that. Kind of like, you all have like a little bit of like the power was deep within you moments you're getting.
Yep.
Zardis, who's like an Aasimar and has celestial blood, is getting a message from their deity, which will kind of deep with more like you have to kind of embrace more of the celestial nature deep within you, kind of like to become the hero you are. Kind of, you're all getting the power was within you. You have to embrace it though, kind of through directions, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sort of like, which none of you noticed because none of you detected it. The key has no magic anymore because you basically got rid of the thing.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
part of that
I
power
kind of-
might be remaining within you, messing with the power you have now. So it's deep within your body. So now you have more powers or something like that.
Well, yeah, we'll figure. Yeah, I'll let you figure that one out.
Again,
but
it's all of you have
I
the
kept-
powers within
yeah.
you. Speech. Kind
They're
of
going to, they're going to like. Ivona wants to research it later, but I'm keeping it as a keepsake. I didn't think it was magical anymore. I'm keeping it because it was like part of me for so long. And I'm like, sentimental value.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a, chunk. It's like pretty big too. It's like a big chunk of
I know.
adamantium.
Yeah, it was literally like, a large chunk of Ada's chest.
So there was a lot of those kind of stories. We'll resolve those, and you will be getting the message that, hey, next time we will be getting into some more combat stuff because it's going to be infiltration rescue mission. We're going to be switching gears to a little bit of the rebellion side of things because you are technically involved in that. And with the power of teleport, you can.
Yep.
So it's sort of like you're not only helping out by getting like the weapon, but since you have to fight an army to get in there, turns out you're helping create your own army in the meantime with a rebellion.
Yeah. Yep.
Makes it a little easier to break into like a palace and like fight your way to like a queen to like use this powerful like sword to sever a soul from her.
Yep.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit easier.
I didn't do anything on Thursday or Friday. Did you do anything?
No.
Quite back. So yeah, no. I think I've been enjoying River's game. I will do a little bit more of it. Honestly speaking, I like that character, but that character is. Again, I think I've talked about it for that one. I don't think I can play that character anywhere else. I'm going to be honest, playing that type of paladin, I think would not work in 95% of the 5e games. Because it's passive as paladin.
Yeah.
Works in a game where you're fighting undead, that's about it, because they're like, man, we gotta kill you because we can't save you in this realm, but maybe your soul can be redeemed. It's a redemption paladin. So you're just like, man, I can't fight you. I gotta make sure you're evil villain. Look, man, come on, you can do better than this. We can redeem you.
Yeah.
And then we're almost done Momo's game, and then I gotta be honest, we are definitely. I do have to look really heavily on how I'm gonna run Scarwall. Because I don't think I'm going to do fully what they intend in the original book, but I have to figure out, because it is very much a big dungeon in a lot of ways, but I have to integrate how you're going to do a story in it, because the idea is, and I can say this pretty much, is because you kind of figure it out. There is a curse on that land. In order to claim the sword, you have to kind of break the curse to a degree.
Okay.
So, there will be a mission in there that's more than just, we're exploring a dungeon. We have to investigate this place and figure out how to break the curse so we can claim the item, kind of thing,
Yeah. That's fun. I actually think that sounds kind of fun. Definitely, though, knowing how Pathfinder adventure paths go, won't be super great. So you'll probably need to do some work to make it interesting.
I've looked over it a little bit, but I really have to look over it. This one, I think, very heavily.
Yeah,
kind of figure it out.
Early adventure, like I'm starting to like realize, like, I mean, what I've read of some of their newer stuff, it's like, okay, they actually do some good stuff. But like the old stuff, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see why Momo and Lightning hate these old things, which are super clunky and not.
It's again like it's the difference between running the original Rise of the Rune Lords and the Return of the Rune Lords, because they're at the back ends of first edition. Return of the Rune Lords probably still has some issues, but I'm sure by that time, while we're almost getting to second edition, they've refined a lot. They've fixed a lot of problems, the way they present things. It's still going to be first edition, but they've fixed a lot of issues. That original one, I'm going to tell you, it's not terrible, but it's very simply put, very much so, most of it's a dungeon crawl. Why? Yeah. Because you go from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon to dungeon. I played Rise of the Rune Lords up to the 5th book. We were about done the 5th book where we had to kind of end, and it was a lot of dungeons in all the books.
Yeah.
Granted, they took different forms, but it was very dungeon crawly most of the time. It's like, nope, gotta go into this place and crawl the dungeon. Gotta go into this place, crawl the dungeon. That kind of stuff.
Yep.
There was some story. There was some interesting character development. I think we had a good set of players that had good characters that we did pretty well. So it wasn't like terrible, but you're gonna have to like dungeon crawls to kind of play that game.
I do like dungeon crawls.
I do like a dungeon crawl too here and there.
Yeah.
I did enjoy playing through. I don't know if we finished that one either. We played through a lot of the Emerald Spire Mega Dungeon that Pathfinder First Edition. That was fun.
Yeah, the one downside to dungeon crawls is they really aren't everyone's cup of tea. Some people really hate them.
Yeah, it is something that you have to.
Yeah, that's why the 5-room dungeon is so popular, because it's a short, sweet dungeon. A lot of people like that.
Yeah, and I think that's why I don't mind a lot of these more simpler dungeons and stuff like that they have in this one at least. They did a good job of having the dungeons tend to be very simple. I think they only have one true mega dungeon, big dungeon, Scarwall, and they have kind of a smaller one, which is the Palace, because you do attack the Palace and you have to kind of fight your way. And then they had an optional one if everybody wants to go Black Ops No Witnesses on the Arconis in Old Corvosa. You could have. I had stats for it.
Yeah, no, I think that would have been fun from a combat tactic perspective, but I also think that's boring from a roleplay perspective.
Oh, hell yeah, I think it definitely would have been. It would not have been great. The Black Ops No Witnesses on those guys.
Yep.
Which reminds
me, it wouldn't help us in the long run, because we want the Arconas on our side for attacking the...
Yeah, well, you have to figure out something to do with that for that adventure. So during the Scarwall exploration, because you can dive in and leave, technically. There's nothing against you going and resting outside of the horrible cursed place if you need to. Turns out you're allowed to.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, interesting week and stuff. All right, I guess we have gone 2.5 hours. We'll leave it here. Yep. Thank you very much for joining me, Worm. Want to give some shout-outs for
DiamondWyrm, twitch.tv/DiamondWyrm, @DiamondWyrm on Twitter. Catch me tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. PDT. Thank you.
Cool. Myself, Dracovin. Yep. Basic schedule. Gaming, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm doing Hollow Knight Randomizer and Elden Ring between those days. Tabletop stuff is Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, early to mid-afternoon. Saturday backup day if I miss any of those. Crimson Queen, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Check that out. We're live play Pathfinder First Edition. This show at every Saturday at 6. If you missed us early on or catching us later on, you can always catch us live. Discord, Twitter, all those kind of social medias are linked below, and any of the places we're at. Hey, again, if you're catching this over on Twitch, check out the YouTube side. If you're checking us on YouTube, just make sure to check us out on the Twitch side here or there or something like that. Anyway, you can always interact with us in the chat. Anyway, okay, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend. I'll be back on Monday. Your next stream is when, Worm?
Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. PDT.
You might have said that and I missed it in your speed through.
I did. I sped through very quickly.
I'm back on Monday for the Hollow Knight Randomizer, Tuesday for Game. Anyway, all right, everybody, have a great rest of one. Farewell. Goodbye.
Bye.